The visage of a familiar writer, musing on horror's cruel anatomy, dissolves into Cauldron Lake's dark waters and a lifeless deer. He laments that thrillers offer only monsters and victims, demanding high stakes and inevitable suffering. Concluding that stories are monsters with many faces, the narrative shifts as dark waves deposit a shivering man onto Cauldron Lake's desolate shore, where he wanders into the fog toward a fate far worse than death. Two wandering strangers, Ed and Tammy, spot the naked man and wisely retreat from the encroaching madness. Left alone, our wanderer presses on, stalked by rustling leaves, snapping twigs, and guttural growls lurking in the brush. Tormented by sudden, horrifying visions that foreshadow his doom, the man stumbles blindly into a clearing illuminated by piercing spotlights, only to be surrounded by silent figures clad in raincoats and grotesque plastic deer masks. Without hesitation, the masked figures seize the naked wanderer and plunge a blade into his flesh, dragging his bleeding body to a wooden table, while he deliriously whispers of Hemingway and a mysterious cult of the word. But these zealots serve the cult of the tree, and their high priest, chanting their dark vigil, violently slices open the man's chest to extract his beating heart, only to be interrupted by an unforeseen complication. Ed and Tammy, stumbling upon the gruesome spectacle, flee into the shadows, prompting the cultists to abandon their bloody altar in pursuit. The camera then drifts from the mutilated corpse toward the true source of this nightmare. Thus begins the long-awaited continuation of Alan Wake's Dark Chronicle. This ritualistic slaughter is merely the latest in 13 years of madness, drawing FBI agents Alex Casey and his new partner, Saga Anderson, into Bright Falls. En route, Saga speaks with her daughter, Logan, who remains safely home with her husband, David, sending warm regards to Agent Casey as the investigators drive toward Cauldron Lake to examine the freshly butchered corpse. Saga finds the timing suspicious, noting the murder occurred just as the FBI arrived, prompting the veteran Casey to let her lead the investigation before they meet Deputy Mulligan near the gloomy shores of Cauldron Lake. Mulligan points the way to the crime scene, currently guarded by Deputy Thornton, and reveals that their terrified witnesses, Ed and Tammy, are waiting out the horror at a local diner for later questioning. Before plunging into the cursed woods, Saga retreats into her mind place, a mental sanctuary she visualizes as the Bright Falls Hotel conference room, allowing her to meticulously dissect the grim facts of the case. Within this psychological refuge, she meticulously arranges photographs and cryptic notes upon a mental detective board, weaving disparate threads of evidence together to forge the grim deductions that will guide her descent into the unknown. Her mind place reveals a chilling pattern. This freshly butchered corpse is the fourth victim, following another gruesome discovery just 2 weeks prior that originally dragged the FBI into this rain-slicked, miserable town. The victims share no earthly connection, save for a single, haunting detail. All vanished 13 years ago in 2010, their bloated corpses only washing ashore in the years since, the latest of them just now, in 2023. Bloated by dark waters, the recent victims bear the brutal ligature marks of captivity, their chests violently hollowed out where their hearts once beat, a macabre signature Saga expertly anticipates finding on this newest corpse. Trusting Saga's brilliant intuition, Casey follows her into a landscape forever scarred. Since 2010, the Federal Bureau of Control has hidden Cauldron Lake behind towering fences, masking their supernatural quarantine as mere volcanic research. Slipping through the rusted perimeter, the hardened Casey grumbles about the oppressive wilderness, longing for the concrete shadows of New York, until they finally rendezvous with Deputy Thornton outside a decaying, abandoned general store. Thornton guides them to the blood-soaked backyard, where Saga examines the mutilated remains, noting that the interrupted killers left behind a chaotic trail of evidence, clearly having laid a deliberate trap for their naked prey. The premeditated slaughter takes a deeply personal turn when Thornton identifies the victim as Robert Nightingale, Casey's paranoid former colleague who was swallowed by the dark presence years ago, pulling Saga deeper into the abyss. Saga represents the uninitiated player, stepping blind into this festival of Finnish madness. Knowing nothing of Bright Falls' 13-year-old secrets, she must gather clues from scratch. Thornton reveals Robert Nightingale vanished here in 2010. Alex Casey recognizes Nightingale's name from the FBI Academy in Quantico. They never worked together, but Casey remembers the dark rumors. After losing his partner, Nightingale lost his mind, spiraling into paranoia, booze, and eventual dismissal. Nightingale vanished entirely. Since he disappeared in 2010, alongside previous victims, his murder clearly ties to those 13-year-old events in Bright Falls. To understand why he emerged naked in the woods after so long, Saga acts. Saga employs her own unique modification of FBI profiling. Blending known facts about the victim and suspects with her piercing intuition, she essentially interrogates a psychological echo of the person, rather than the man himself. She questions a mental construct formed from gathered evidence, yet, unlike standard profiling, a highly debatable tool in any investigator's arsenal, Saga's method strikes with an uncanny, almost supernatural precision that defies all logical explanation. Her accuracy borders on a superpower, though in a universe of telekinetic anomalies, anything is possible. Questioning Nightingale's echo, Anderson deduces Robert emerged from the lake, his murder a dark ritual. The agents head down to investigate. Their path to the lake is blocked by a massive boulder. Beside it, Saga discovers a typewritten page with handwritten corrections. Chillingly, the manuscript describes the FBI agents finding this exact page while investigating Nightingale's murder. Unaware of the author's identity, Saga and Casey assume the killers left the page for a twisted game. Profiling Nightingale, Saga senses a foreign object lodged in his chest, prompting her to order Thornton to move the body. Thornton takes the corpse to Bright Falls for examination. Driving back, Saga admits to Alex that a killer leaving notes is a thrilling first for her. She finds this grim puzzle deeply fascinating, eager to crack it. Bright Falls seems unchanged after 13 years, still preparing for Deerfest. Yet, subtle shifts linger. The Elderwood Palace Lodge now stands where an old hangar rested, serving as their base, and internally, the town has a new sheriff. Sarah Breaker, the former sheriff, eventually moved up in the world, leaving to work for the feds. The game leaves it ambiguous whether she joined the Bureau of Investigation or the Bureau of Control. Sarah was replaced by her cousin, Tim Breaker. Despite his intriguing name, Tim is a genuinely pleasant, good-natured man. He greets the FBI agents outside the local diner, immediately offering them a warm cup of coffee. Tim notes the witnesses, Ed and Tammy Booker, wait inside. Saga volunteers to interrogate them, while Casey and the sheriff talk outside. The Bookers are terrified, deeply worried this gruesome murder will be pinned on them. Saga calmly urges the couple not to panic, for now. Tammy reveals she is a true crime writer. She and her husband traveled all the way from New York to Bright Falls, chasing the ghost of a missing man. They came seeking information on Alan Wake, the famous author who vanished here 13 years ago. Scouting Cauldron Lake for book material, they witnessed a naked man crawl from the dark water, acting completely unhinged. The man screamed delirious curses at them. Assuming he was high, the couple retreated into the woods, only to hear gunshots. Following the sound, Ed and Tammy stumbled upon men in deer masks gutting their victim. The masked men chanted about the cult of the tree. The Bookers fled and called the police, but Tammy hides a crucial detail. Profiling her, Saga realizes the couple found a double triangle necklace dropped by the cultists. Tammy wanted to keep the necklace, but Anderson confiscates it as evidence, confirming the Bookers are innocent bystanders. Synthesizing the clues, Saga concludes this is no lone serial killer stalking the shadows of the Pacific Northwest. An organized cult of murderers operates here, driven by a dark, specific purpose. Though it complicates the investigation immensely, Saga feels a morbid thrill. This is her very first case hunting a full-blown cult. Leaving the diner, Saga is suddenly stopped by Rose, the waitress. Shockingly, Rose addresses Anderson by name, acting like an old friend, and offers condolences for the terrible tragedy involving Saga's daughter, Logan. Saga freezes, stunned. The waitress, Rose, speaks of a tragedy, claims Saga's daughter, Logan, drowned in these very waters. Saga freezes, a cold dread pooling in her gut. Her little girl is alive and well. Logan is safe at home in Virginia, yet Rose speaks with such chilling conviction, a shadow of doubt creeps in. Saga buries it, dismissing the waitress as a delusional fanatic, insisting her daughter is perfectly fine. Stepping out of the diner, Saga rejoins her partners. Sheriff Breaker points them toward the morgue to examine Nightingale's corpse. En route, Saga floats her cult theory, a grim hypothesis that rubs Agent Casey the wrong way. Casey meets her theory with a cynical scowl. Tim brushes the cult of the tree off as a cheap urban legend, a boogeyman crafted to keep wandering fools out of the midnight woods. Tim advises Saga to ignore Rose's morbid delusions. At the station, Mulligan and Thornton confirm Nightingale's corpse awaits in the morgue. With the county coroner out of town, the grim task falls to them. Saga, armed with the right qualifications, steps up to the slab. Down in the claustrophobic basement morgue, the autopsy begins. Immediately, grotesque anomalies emerge. Nightingale's flesh is a ruined, waterlogged mess. The corpse bears the bloated hallmarks of drowning, yet Robert was strapped to that table alive, nowhere near water. Smeared, illegible text is tattooed across his flesh, a bizarre defilement for a man like him. The same cryptic script scars his extracted heart, defying all rational logic. Sensing something buried deep within his chest cavity, Saga plunges her bare hands into the cold, ruined flesh, searching for the truth. She pulls a blood-soaked manuscript page from the gore. It dictates a grim prophecy, a resurrected Nightingale hunting her down, forcing her to seek refuge in the blinding light where the taken are blind. Saga dismisses the morbid prose as twisted fanfiction. Suddenly, Sheriff Breaker recalls similar pages surfacing in Bright Falls, though he never connected them to the murders. He reaches out to hand her the evidence. An unseen force paralyzes him. Panic contorts Tim's face as a stranger's visage flashes briefly in the suffocating shadows. Then, Sheriff Breaker simply vanishes into thin air, leaving only a single fluttering page behind. Before the shock can settle, Nightingale rises from the slab. The dead man slaughters a deputy, knocks Casey cold, and disarms Saga, hurling her to the floor before turning his murderous gaze toward the others. Recalling the manuscript's bloody warning, Saga scrambles beneath the harsh glare of a fluorescent lamp. The resurrected killer is blinded by the glow. Seizing her chance, she dives into the corridor to retrieve her weapon. Saga empties her Glock into the towering corpse, but instead of falling, Nightingale dissolves into thin air. Surrounded by carnage, the surviving agents realize the cult is breeding supernatural nightmares known as the Taken. Nightingale is one of these monsters now. Snatching up the page Breaker left behind, Saga reads her next grim directive. She must hunt the dead man back to Cauldron Lake, into a nightmare called the Overlap. Accepting the manuscript as gospel, Saga and Alex prepare to return to the lake. They leave the bewildered deputies to clean up the blood-soaked morgue, explaining the absurd truth: the dead walk, and the sheriff is gone. Striding toward their car, Casey senses a brewing war with the cult of the tree. He radios for heavy FBI backup to flood Bright Falls before turning the ignition and steering them back toward the Cursed Lake. On the dark road, Alex finally confesses. He knows exactly why Nightingale came to Bright Falls in 2010. The rogue agent was hunting Alan Wake, the famous author who built an empire on hard-boiled crime novels. Wake's fictional protagonist was a gritty detective named Alex Casey. Sharing a name and profession with a literary icon made the real Agent Casey a walking punchline among his colleagues, a bitter joke he learned to swallow. Alan Wake's mysterious disappearance left his devoted readers starving for a final chapter. By 2013, that obsession curdled into madness, birthing a deranged murder cult in New York that painted the streets with blood. This talk show is mere fiction, its guests unwitting actors playing their parts. Mr. Dorr wishes Alan luck, eagerly awaiting the final chapter of his hero's journey, a monomythic conclusion titled Return. and thanks him for the bizarre interview. Mr. Door confesses the meta-narrative makes him feel like a doomed character, destined to vanish once his scene ends. The studio lights die, leaving Alan stranded in an empty, echoing set, convinced his mind is finally fracturing. Convinced his sanity is slipping, Alan craves only one thing: to return home to his wife, Alice. Fleeing through the studio's labyrinthine corridors, he stumbles into a warehouse, suddenly sensing a sinister presence lurking in the shadows. Desperate to escape, he finds the warehouse door locked. Wake is trapped. A formless, terrifying darkness slithers toward its prey, swallowing the cornered writer whole. Alan awakens in his study, his only home for 13 agonizing years. Here, he bleeds words onto countless pages, desperate to escape the prison he traded for Alice's life. The isolation shatters his psyche, leaving his own memories suspect. The only truth he can trust is his plot board. Pinned to the board are draft summaries and frantic warnings to himself. The index cards perfectly describe the talk show's events, proving the entire studio nightmare is nothing more than a narrative spun from his own desperate typewriter. Mr. Door's musings on the meta-narrative and the fabric of reality are terrifyingly accurate. The host has flawlessly prophesied every twisted ordeal Alan will endure as we take control of the writer's harrowing journey through the dark. Trapped within the dark place, Alan bends its rules with his creative power, casting himself as the protagonist of initiation to script his escape. Striking the typewriter keys, he plunges himself back into the talk show's neon glare. His nightmare restarts in the studio dressing room. On the television, Mr. Door announces a discussion on the cinematic adaptations of Alan Wake's novels, introducing a very special guest to the stage, an actor named Sam Lake. A curious echo, in the first game's talk show, Sam Lake sat beside Alan, contorting his face into his iconic Max Payne grimace. Back in 2010, the lead writer's cameo was a mere joke, a fleeting Easter egg. Now, Sam Lake's presence in the Remedy-connected universe is narratively justified. He is no longer the writer, but an actor, cast to play the gritty detective Alex Casey in the cinematic adaptations of Alan Wake's dark novels. Since Sam also lends his face to the in-game Alex Casey, one might accuse him of a creator's vanity. Yet, this narcissistic stroke feels perfectly justified, a brilliant nod to the tangled roots from which Casey was born. Casey was forged in the image of Max Payne, a character Remedy no longer owned when Alan Wake debuted. History dictates, and fans agree, that of all the faces Max wore, the original remains the most iconic. That first face belonged to Sam Lake, casting the real-life writer as a character within a game about a writer who is himself trapped inside his own twisted stories adds a deliciously dark layer of irony. A writer inventing a character played by the actual writer, all wrapped in a narrative that violently shatters the fourth wall with relentless meta-commentary. In this surreal, shadowy world, the absurdity feels entirely, terrifyingly appropriate. It is pure, indulgent fan service. When Sam flashed that grimace at Summer Game Fest, only a handful of die-hard Remedy fans laughed. Soon, we will need bite-sized videos just to explain the joke to a new generation. Yet they lose their minds over a simple Spider-Man screenshot. Such is our society. Back on the talk show, Alan meets Sam Lake, stunned to find the actor looks exactly as he always envisioned his detective, Alex Casey. Mr. Door probes Alan about the cinematic adaptations. Alan harbors bitter resentment. Directors butcher his vision, twisting his stories to fit their own shallow agendas. He confesses a desperate yearning to seize control of the filmmaking process himself. He refuses to watch filmmakers butcher his life's work. Mr. Door then thrills the audience, unveiling an exclusive clip from the upcoming film, Casey's Murder Case. The screen flickers to life, revealing the weathered face of Detective Casey. Spitting noir metaphors, Casey prowls a rain-slicked New York night, hunting for a vanished writer. His only lead is an angel-shaped lamp, promising to illuminate the shadows. The clip ends, and Mr. Door gracefully closes the broadcast. The host abruptly ends the show, ignoring Alan's desperate questions. Wandering the empty studio, Alan finds the cafeteria unbothered by lurking horrors. Inside the janitor's room waits a familiar face, Ahti from Control. We already know Ahti is no ordinary man. He is an interdimensional entity, a god wearing human skin. When the Hiss invaded the oldest house, their corrupting resonance washed over him without leaving a trace. When the Hiss trapped Jessie Faden in an endless looping nightmare, Ahti slipped into her dreams. He became her anchor, urging her to fight on, long after gifting her that vital cassette player. That player was the only key to surviving the ashtray maze. Now, Ahti plays the exact same role for Alan, guiding him through the dark, though he still masks his truths behind thick, cryptic riddles. He speaks in maddening half-whispers and vague metaphors, stubbornly calling our hero Tom. He hands Alan a key, urging him down into the basement to retrieve a vital relic that supposedly belonged to this Tom. Ahti warns him to stop whining and keep working toward freedom. In the damp basement, Wake unearths a shoebox containing a switchless angel lamp. Here, in the dark place, it needs no mundane switch to function. This angelic artifact devours light, storing the glow within its belly. Alan can carry this stolen radiance to reshape reality itself, shifting the very architecture of the room whenever he takes or grants illumination. Every location now bleeds between two states, light and dark. To escape, Alan must illuminate a cramped back room filled with televisions. The flickering screens reveal a recording of him, still wearing his old clothes. This past Alan, dressed in his old attire, confesses his utter exhaustion. He has penned countless useless stories, slowly losing his grip on sanity, yet he desperately forces himself to keep writing, hoping for salvation. The magical clicker, the very switch he used to banish the dark presence at Cauldron Lake, is long lost. Yet, the recorded Alan reveals a twist. He now possesses the angel lamp that birthed it. The clicker was torn directly from this angelic artifact. Pulling it from the shoebox today was hardly Alan's first time finding it, and it certainly won't be his last, absorbing his own manic echoes. Clinging to the desperate mantra to never stop writing, Alan steps outside. He enters a twisted, shadow-drenched reflection of New York City. Through the gloom, a ringing payphone demands the weary writer's attention. Alan lifts the receiver, greeted by a gruff, vaguely familiar male voice. The nameless stranger skips the introductions, ordering Alan to head straight for the Caldera Street subway station before the line goes dead. The stranger promises to call again. Wake presses him, certain he knows that voice. The caller doesn't deny it, sighing that Alan has forgotten everything again, but insisting that they are actually partners. They are a team, working on some grand design. The line abruptly dies. Spotting a discarded subway ticket, Wake obeys his phantom ally, finding the Caldera Street station sealed away in the crushing dark. To carve a path into the subway, Alan needs light. He chases a lonely bulb down a suffocating alley, only to stumble into Alex Casey. Not the real FBI agent helping Saga Anderson, but the fiction. This is Detective Alex Casey, the gritty protagonist of Alan's old novels. Wake briefly mistakes him for actor Sam Lake, but this Casey is deadly serious, investigating a murder tied to scattered manuscript pages. We hear Casey's inner monologue. The pages detail a ritualistic cult murder. The detective suspects Wake is either the deranged mastermind scripting his own twisted masterpiece, or simply the cult's very next victim. Casey reaches for his revolver, but a sudden, violent disturbance deep in the alley draws him away. Alan follows the detective into the gloom, only to find his fictional creation bleeding out on the pavement. An echo of Casey's thoughts reveals a recurring nightmare of dying in this very alley. With his final breath, he curses his creator. Taking the fallen revolver and flashlight, Alan inherits the dead detective's role. Alan assumes the detective's mantle, capturing the coveted light in his lamp before braving the subway. Gloomy shadows flood the alleyway. Some dissolve at his approach, while others demand a brutal, old-fashioned fight. He answers their hostility with a blinding flashlight and a heavy dose of lead. Now armed, Alan faces the grim reality of his situation. The dark place is a profoundly unnatural realm, its twisted essence laid bare. The novel Initiation reveals this truth, depicting New York mirrored upon a glassy surface, a theme subtly foreshadowed by a mounted deer head. Like a rippling pool, the dark place constantly distorts its stolen reflections. It warps reality, imposing a sinister logic upon the shadows. Here, the very flow of time fractures into something unrecognizable. Events unfold, and objects shift, proving that existence within this nightmare refuses to stand still. Time refuses to freeze, yet it never flows in a straight line. Instead, it bends and swirls, twisting violently into a maddening spiral that shatters the natural chronology of events, a chaotic truth we soon witness. Amidst this temporal madness sits Alan, desperately writing his own escape. Crafting his magnum opus, he remains bound by a cruel rule. He can only manifest elements tethered to his past, like his former home, New York. He draws upon New York streets, late-night television appearances, and fragments of early drafts, from a repurposed Night Spring script to his undeniably brilliant, hard-boiled bestsellers, starring the relentless detective Alex Casey. Every word must obey the unforgiving laws of a thriller. Despite hopes that Alan might finally seize control, merging scattered narratives into a rushing current to carry him from these abyssal depths, reality proves far bleaker. The mastermind falters, his sanity clouded by endless, suffocating isolation. The dark presence never rests, ruthlessly sabotaging his every draft. The nightmare unfolding now is merely another desperate attempt to write his way out. Wake wields New York and Casey, but the dark place violently corrupts his tale. The city manifests as a hostile, negative reflection of Alan's fractured psyche, its rotting streets shaped by the writer's own suffocating self-hatred. Graffiti screams his failures. It's your fault. You lost her. The shadowless enemy stalking him wear Alan's own face, a cruel detail hidden in the gloom. Furthermore, this abyssal prison maintains a terrifying tether to reality. The dark place bleeds into the waking world, its nightmares echoing across the divide. Events written in the shadows manifest in reality, altered in circumstance and location, yet preserving their grim, undeniable essence. Alan shifts reality with a flicker of light, conjuring a subway entrance from vandalized walls. His astral projection wanders Caldera Street, trapped within Initiation, while his true self remains imprisoned in the writer's room, desperately drafting. As the author, Alan rewrites scenes to forge a path, guided by spectral visions of Alex Casey. He drafts a grim new plotline, an FBI agent hunting a murderous cult, forcing the dark place to obey his edits. The platform shifts, revealing a blood-stained FBI badge, likely Nightingale's. Yet here, archetypes matter more than identities. Following the Crimson Trail, Alan descends into the very tunnels Saga Anderson glimpsed, binding their two dark narratives together. The bloody trail hits a dead end, demanding fresh inspiration. A new draft conjures corrupt cops echoing Thornton and Mulligan, mere archetypal shadows of the Bright Falls deputies, yet bound to them by the bleeding dimensions. Another vision strikes. Casey interrogates a forensics professor wearing the face of true crime author Tammy Booker. She whispers of the cult of the word, zealots executing ritual sacrifices in the subway, perfectly mirroring Alan Wake's novels. Rumors claim the writer himself orchestrated the carnage as Mr. Scratch, the devil incarnate. The cult's bloody sigil, overlapping downward triangles forming a W, brands their crimes with the name of the word and of Wake. These zealots worship Wake's texts as a twisted gospel. Deeper in the tunnels, their atrocities multiply. They cornered subway drifters, known as the Torchbearers, burning them alive until only vengeful, suffocating smoke remained in the dark. The Torchbearers were real, a secret society shielding Bright Falls from the Taken, led by the luminous Cynthia Weaver. But here, trapped within Initiation, their noble legacy is reduced to another mysterious, tragic echo in the shadows. In Initiation, they remain a mysterious group of vagrants pursuing unknown goals. We only know they dwell in the subway, painting fluorescent graffiti and torch symbols, worshipping a massive mural of a tree. Whether it represents the Tree of Life, Yggdrasil, or something else remains unclear. Just remember their arboreal connection, and that these torchbearer allies stood by us until the cult of the Word brutally incinerated them. Yet, the torchbearers leave behind words of power, allowing Alan to upgrade his gear. The cult of the Word, however, reserves their captured FBI agent for a dark sacrifice, aiming to summon their deity underground. For this ritual, the cultists chant a two-part mantra: "Your friends will meet him when you are gone." Thomas Zane spoke this exact phrase in the dark place when Alan's evil doppelganger first appeared. Thus, the cult of the Word attempts to summon Scratch, but their ritual fails when the awakened FBI agent flees. Recaptured, he is dragged to the Torchbearer's desecrated sanctuary, now a twisted place of power. Reaching this site, Alan writes the ritual's name into his initiation draft. This sudden edit summons the dark presence from the tunnels, forcing Wake to sprint away from the lethal, swirling smoke to avoid a brutal demise. He hides in a brightly lit safe room, but the moment he steps out, the shadow resumes its hunt. Wake dives into a collapsing tunnel, sealing the entity behind him, and emerges into a massive, silent cavern. At its center lies a stone altar bearing the murdered FBI agent. Approaching it, Alan witnesses realities bleeding together, just as Saga did, the cult's gruesome sacrifice overlapping with a similar, yet distinct, macabre tale. Opening an overlap requires a push from both sides of the veil, the real world and the dark place. Saga fulfills her half by reciting the poem and offering the witch's heart at the legendary site. But to tear the fabric of reality, the dark place demands a horror narrative echoing the real world's darkness. Alan provides this catalyst by writing the grim tale of the FBI agent's subway murder. As the overlap opens, the agent's excised heart shifts from the dark place into reality, waiting for Saga to find it. We witness that first shadowy encounter between Wake and Anderson, but this time, from the writer's perspective. He hears Saga just as faintly and brokenly as she hears him. He begs for her help before the connection severs, but this fleeting contact shifts something deep within the dark place. Wake senses home drawing near. Above the subway plaza, a statue of Alan replaces the fountain, and Parliament Tower looms behind it, the very New York high-rise where Alan and his wife, Alice, once lived. Concluding the subway narrative, Alan endures Alex Casey's abstract, rambling monologue before leaving Caldera Street. En route to the tower, the mysterious caller rings again, eager to hear of the writer's progress at the murder scene. The caller rejoices, claiming they are closer to freedom. He urges Alan to check Parliament Tower to ensure Alice escaped, a cruel irony, since her freedom sealed his imprisonment. The dark presence, now wearing Wake's face, remains watchful. The line dies as Alan enters Parliament Tower. Another vision of Alex Casey manifests. The detective weighs two grim theories. Either Wake is a victim of the cult's twisted narrative, or he is the monster orchestrating it all. Seeking answers, Casey visits Alice Wake, convinced her recent, desperate artwork hides a cry for help. Terrified that his wife is being dragged into this nightmare, Alan steps into the elevator, ascending toward their old apartment. As the elevator doors part, a blinding flash from Alice's photography equipment disorients him, rigged to trigger upon entry. Yet, the apartment stands empty, devoid of his wife's comforting presence. Instead, he finds scattered black and white photographs, including a chilling shot of Scratch and a memory card. It holds a video diary where Alice reminisces about their first meeting, their blossoming love, and the idyllic days before the darkness. The turning point was Alan's burnout and violent temper. When his writer's block set in, his darkest traits surfaced. Desperate, Alice brought him to Washington State for fresh air, secretly planning a visit to Dr. Emil Hartmann. Alice recounts the nightmare from her own fractured perspective, a bitter argument with Alan, then his sudden disappearance. Unaware she spent a week trapped beneath the lake, she mourns her drowned husband until 2017. 6 years ago, the phantom clatter of a typewriter begins echoing through her apartment at night. Then Alan appears, but this is no husband. It is Scratch, a monstrous doppelganger wearing his stolen face. Scratch keeps Alice in perpetual terror, driving her to seek the Federal Bureau of Control. Ultimately, she fights back, rigging motion sensor cameras to capture the monster's visits for a haunting exhibition titled The Dark Place. The exhibition aims to expose the world's hidden shadows. As a projector displays Scratch's sinister photograph, Alan is pulled directly into the image, watching the doppelganger's wicked visage seamlessly morph into his own. The face shifts into Wake's own as he materializes outside the writer's room. He attempts to draft an escape through his projection, but the narrative drags him back to the beginning, snapping the loop shut. Trapped inside the writer's room once more, he discovers his own corpse slumped at the typewriter, a bullet hole in its skull. Beside it rests a manuscript titled Forgiveness, its author's name violently scratched out. This defacement proves Scratch has butchered the manuscript. Before Alan can even process the horror, the dark presence bursts into the room as a malevolent smoke, engulfing the ceiling and violently overtaking the helpless writer. The narrative bleeds back to Bright Falls, anchoring on Saga. Alan briefs the FBI agents on his 13-year purgatory, the deceptive lake, and the dark presence hungering to consume the waking world. The writer reveals a grim truth. The dark presence and Mr. Scratch are one and the same. This monster wears Alan's face, and Wake suspects it slipped into reality right alongside him. Scratch intends to twist our reality into a living nightmare, starting with Bright Falls during the upcoming Deerfest. His weapon is Return, the very manuscript Alan penned within the suffocating dark place. Scratch has butchered the text, editing the story to serve his apocalyptic design. These are the pages Saga keeps finding. A veteran of this shadow war, Alan knows reality warps slowly, bleeding outward. The corruption ripples outward from Cauldron Lake, buying the writer precious time. To banish Scratch and save the world, Alan needs the clicker, but the monstrous doppelganger hunts for the exact same artifact. The clicker can manifest the absolute darkest finale of Return. When Saga questions the FBI's sudden involvement, Alan confesses he wrote her into the narrative after seeing her in his dark place visions. Those visions orchestrated his escape, but Scratch's edits now place Saga and Casey in mortal peril. Wake believes the local cultists hold the clicker, mirroring the cult of the word's dark devotion. The cult of the tree must worship Scratch too. Alan tries to hide the manuscript page, revealing the clicker's location, but Saga's uncanny profiling pierces his deception, exposing the heroine's next destined move. The page dictates the heroine will find the cultists clutching the clicker in a watery trailer park. Saga heads out alone, leaving Casey and Bright Falls to guard the anxious, desperate writer. The FBI dictates the terms. Besides, Alex harbors deeply personal questions regarding his fictional namesake. Saga drives to Watery, a gloomy enclave of Finnish immigrants carved into the damp Pacific Northwest. Smaller and bleaker than Bright Falls, its only landmarks are a sauna and Suomi Hall. Inside this rustic club, the enigmatic janitor Ahti commands the stage, singing to the shadows. Ahti's vacation in Watery means nothing to Saga. Leaving the hall behind, she ventures toward the trailer park, only to be intercepted by local celebrities, Ilmo and his twin brother, Jaakko Koskela. The Koskela brothers embrace Saga like a lifelong friend. The dark fiction of Return is spreading like a virus, rewriting memories and dragging innocent minds into its twisted, alternate reality. Now, the Koskela brothers fall under the same dark spell, convinced Saga lived in their trailer park before a tragic accident stole her daughter. Realizing argument is futile, Anderson plays along, demanding to see this phantom home. The brothers rush off to Bright Falls, leaving Ilmo to direct her toward Coffee World for a spare key. With floods destroying the bridge, Saga braves the shadowed woods, where the Taken lurk, proving Scratch draws near. Scratch closes in on the clicker. Arriving at Coffee World, Saga finds a ghost town, deciding to violently pry open the locked gift shop. Retrieving a screwdriver means fighting the corrupted park staff, leaving her utterly alone. Forcing the lock, Saga cracks the safe's puzzle, claiming the trailer keys just as Ilmo promised. Reaching the park gates, she spots two aging, leather-clad drunks, Thor and Odin, of the legendary old gods of Asgard. Drenched in their own moonshine, the old rockers drift on a drunken wavelength. Odin drunkenly suggests abandoning heavy metal for punk, urging his brother to forsake bathing and simply drink until the bitter end. Their slurred debate masks a deeper truth. When Saga asks for the Anderson trailer, Odin warmly welcomes her as sunshine. Despite appearing as senile fools, Thor and Odin always harbor a piercing, uncanny insight. Just as they once guided Alan, Thor warns Saga to reject the lies of her daughter's death, a cruel fiction meant to break her. Odin declares that while normal people bow to the story, Andersons never will. They are Vikings, untamed by fate. Saga must write her own path, for she is Thor's granddaughter and Odin's grandniece. Hearing this wild lineage, she feels no joyful reunion, dismissing the drunken old men as entirely insane. Tapping her temple, she leaves the madmen to investigate the trailer. Inside, the alternate reality of Return crafts a terrifyingly perfect illusion, a life where a divorced Saga brought Logan to this very park. The fiction dictates she moved to Watery to be near Thor and Odin, until a tragic accident claimed Logan. Broken, this fictional Saga quit the FBI and fled, only to eventually return to the Bureau. She supposedly returned to investigate the Cauldron Lake murders with her partner. This is the timeline Return paints, a lie infecting more minds by the hour, yet the dark story fails to overwrite Saga's own true memories. Unable to forge her mind, the narrative tries a more insidious trick. Stepping into the bedroom, Saga finds a chilling array of deeply personal items belonging to the real Logan, designed to make her doubt the truth. A favorite poster, authentic childhood drawings, and her junior FBI agent diploma. The terrifying proof unsettles Saga. Searching the room, she discovers a photograph showing the clicker clutched in the hands of the sinister cultists. The photo reveals a cultist holding the switch inside the Kalevala Knights clubhouse, flanked by Thor and Odin, sparking grim suspicions. Worse still, a newspaper clipping screams the headline of a little girl drowned in Cauldron Lake. Staring at Logan's face in the obituary, panic grips Saga's heart. She desperately dials her daughter, but only silence answers. Hoping she is just at school, Saga calls her husband, David, but the line remains dead. Leaving a frantic voicemail, she glances outside to see Deputy Mulligan watching her, his face hidden behind a deer mask and wreathed in darkness. Tracking him, she finds Thornton corrupted by the exact same rot. The deputies have fallen to the taken, revealing themselves as Cult of the Tree members. A brief chase leads Saga straight to the Kalevala Knights garage from the photograph, a clubhouse owned by the Koskela brothers. Inside the building, damning evidence proves the brothers' cult ties. The garage hides a secret sanctuary where the fanatics hoarded their gear, painted their symbols, and meticulously plotted their murders with chilling bureaucratic precision. In the basement assembly hall, the cult kept their holy relic, the clicker, but the corrupted deputies snatch it first, fleeing into a newly formed overlap in Watery, as foretold by a freshly discovered manuscript page. The key to this overlap is an unfinished parade float built by the Koskelas. Saga must scavenge the missing parts, knowing the entrance lies at a site steeped in dark history, a cursed well on Coffee World's edge. On the fringes of Coffee World sits the Huotari Well, where local myth claims the malicious Finnish water spirit Neki lurks, a demon that once drove brothers Ilmari and Jakobi Huotari to slaughter and drown their victims. Ilmari eventually butchers his own brother, dragging their grim crimes into the light, a dark parallel to the Koskela twins. Now, completing the macabre float depicting this legend requires a circuit board and a traditional puko knife. She needs the puko knife for Ilmari's hand, eerie cassette tapes, and a stag mask scattered across Coffee World, though a cheap plastic disguise will not suffice, for the Koskela brothers demand a far more gruesome substitute. They require the skull of Mocha the Moose, the park's overdosed mascot, a grim tribute entrusted to Mulligan and Thornton. Piercing their twisted minds, Saga discovers this morbid prize rests directly atop the cursed Huotari Well. The skull materializes through static, echoing Nightingale's phantom heart, and as Saga completes the float, the well bleeds crimson to reveal the overlap. Descending into the abyss, she suffers haunting visions of Wake pleading and her daughter drowning. Guided through the looping nightmare by Ahti's spectral song, Saga slaughters the corrupted deputies, only to confront a phantom Wake who confesses he remains trapped, shattering reality as the desperate writer claims he forged her into his heroine. Outraged at being a mere pawn, Saga awakens in the waking world, clutching the reality-altering clicker. Greeted only by dead air from Casey and her husband, she speeds back toward Bright Falls to deliver the artifact to Alan. Meanwhile, the cult of the tree surrounds the Elderwood Lodge as a furious Casey interrogates Wake. The writer insists he cannot conjure life from nothing, but merely channels dark visions of reality, a perilous craft he once abandoned. Though his memory is shattered, Wake desperately seeks a perfect ending to save them all, but his confession is drowned out by shattering glass as the cult opens fire, entirely unfazed by Casey's federal badge. The masked zealots demand the writer's head in exchange for peace, a bargain Casey violently rejects, drawing his weapon and plunging straight into the blood-soaked corridor to meet the encroaching darkness head-on. Gunfire erupts in the narrow halls, while Wake collapses under a paralyzing migraine, his mind assaulted by flashing monstrous visions of Scratch that intensify with every step the cultists take toward him. Blacking out, the writer awakens drenched in foreign blood amidst a slaughtered room of cultists. He knows the monstrous Scratch butchered them all, yet the dark entity inexplicably spared his own life. Desperate to find Casey, Wake scavenges a shotgun and flashlight from a mangled corpse, stepping into the oppressive woods where distant gunfire echoes, only to be ambushed by cultists, now twisted into the Taken. Fleeing the shadows, Wake is struck by another blinding agony, witnessing the dark presence descending upon Casey before darkness claims him again. Simultaneously, Saga arrives from Watery, spotting a lone cultist in the brush. A masked figure raises a blade over the unconscious Wake, but Saga's gunshot shatters the execution, unmasking Ilmo Koskela just as the Federal Bureau of Control swarms from the shadows to bag them both. Senior Agent Kieran Estevez coldly dismisses Saga, seizing the investigation, but the furious detective, her own family now entangled in this nightmare, silently conceals the reality-shifting clicker from the Bureau's arrogant clutches. Estevez claims the Bureau is already hunting for the missing Casey and orders Saga home, but the defiant detective refuses to yield, desperately plotting a way to slip the clicker back into Wake's hands. Biding her time, Saga visits Tor and Odin at the nursing home for answers, finally peeling back the deception surrounding the cult of the tree and why the seemingly genial Ilmo Koskela attempted to butcher Wake. The prologue painted the cultists as bloodthirsty savages gutting a helpless victim, but they are no villains. Their grim duty is slaughtering the corrupted, taken that crawl from Cauldron Lake, just as Nightingale had become. When Wake banished the Dark Presence years ago, its enslaved thralls sank into the abyssal lake, vanishing into the dark place until the lake began spitting them back out, twisted and hungry for blood. He crawls from the lake straight into the Koskela brothers, who slaughter the Taken. They realize the torchbearers are failing, their time long past. The Koskelas take up the bloody baton, stepping into the dark. The Koskelas forge their own security firm. It is a grim echo of the cult of the word from the dark place, whose rise also erased the torchbearers, albeit through far more sinister circumstances. Every cultist knows Cauldron Lake bleeds nightmares. Some even waded through the Bright Falls hellscape of 2010. Deputies Mulligan and Thornton stand among them, veterans of the badge who once graced the pages of comic books. They feature in Night Springs and Psycho Thriller, helping Dr. Hartman execute a Taken kidnapper. To keep locals out of the cursed woods, the Koskela brothers invent a brilliant, twisted marketing ploy, the cult of the tree. They spin a chilling yarn for the uninitiated, wander the midnight woods, and cultists will slit your throat. The locals despise the Federal Bureau of Control, resenting the cold iron fences the feds erected around the lake. Those fences strangle the tourist trade in Bright Falls and Watery. Ilmo and Yako carry the dying local economy on their backs, while their cult relentlessly sabotages the FBC, pilfering classified documents from the Fed's grasp. The cult's twin triangle symbol is born of a stoned haze. A high Ilmo stares at a stolen FBC dossier, his double vision twisting their rigid pyramid into the jagged silhouette of a spruce tree. This unravels the final hidden message in the song, Take Control. The cultists even hijack the FBC's observation station, rerouting the early warning signals of altered world events at the lake directly into their own hands. The hijacked signals feed the cult of the tree. One grim night, they descend upon Cauldron Lake, finding no monster but the clicker. Stolen FBC files confirm this simple switch holds terrifying, world-altering power. They weave the clicker into their bloody execution rituals. Whenever an AWE signal flares, the cult rallies in the shadows. They ambush their prey, bind them tight, and carve the beating heart from their chest. They shove the switch into the gaping chest cavity, clicking it to banish the dark. 2 victims die this way, but with Nightingale, the ritual fractures. Trespassing witnesses interrupt the slaughter, leaving his chest empty. Without the clicker, the darkness festering inside Nightingale remains unpurged. He rises from the slab, a monster reborn. Meanwhile, Mulligan and Thornton revel in the cult's secrecy, treating their grim crusade against the Taken with deadly devotion. Their zeal breeds fatal mistakes. They slaughter an innocent woman, mistaking her for a monster. Panicking, Mulligan and Thornton dump her corpse down the Huatari well. But the guilt takes root, turning the deputies into fragile prey. That festering guilt makes them perfect vessels for the dark presence. They likely succumb in the morgue while Saga and Alex hunt Nightingale. The Koskela brothers' sudden, urgent departure to Bright Falls masks a far darker errand. Their urgent business is the assassination of Alan Wake. He crawled from the lake like the others, marking him for death. Blind to the truth of his escape, the cult moves in for the kill until Saga intervenes. Saga saves the writer just in time. Now, Wake and the Koskelas sit in FBC custody, while Alex Casey vanishes into thin air. Seeking answers about the clicker, Saga drives toward the nursing home when Tor suddenly calls. The old man senses her approach, desperate to warn her, but chaos erupts. Screams and bitter curses at an old woman echo before the line dies. Saga races to Valhalla nursing home, where Rose guards the threshold. Rose moonlights here, tending to the decaying minds of Valhalla. Saga demands entry to check on her blood, but the waitress blocks the path, spinning a web of flimsy, suspicious excuses to keep the detective out. Saga forces her way inside, pretending she only wants to greet the other residents. Rose relents, introducing Norman, a sauna fanatic, and Mandy May with her endless knitting. Questioning them about the Andersons yields a quiet truth. Odin sleeps. Odin slumbers upstairs, while Tor's violent outburst ended with a smashed phone, a brutal electric shock, and a hammer to his own skull. Rose introduces another resident, Ahti, still stealing janitor uniforms to mop these cursed floors. Ahti spins a track from the old Gods of Asgard, claiming he once shared a stage with Tor and Odin. Saga presses Rose about Tor's injury, but the nurse deflects, a smiling brick wall of denial. Abandoning the stubborn nurse, Saga ascends. Tor's room lies in ruins, the shattered aftermath of a drunken frenzy. The old man is missing, leaving Saga to find Odin, who lies paralyzed by a crushing hangover. Unable to interrogate a drunk, Saga retreats into her mind place to profile him, but the unexpected strikes. Odin's consciousness breaches her sanctuary, speaking directly. He reveals the dormant, inherited power pulsing through the Anderson bloodline. She is a seer, piercing the veil of lies. Her profiling is no mere trick, but a supernatural birthright. Odin promises Tor holds the answers, yet warns his brother faces grave danger from a returning Dark Lord. Tor bears the mark of darkness. Odin directs Saga to the wellness center to find him, but issues a chilling warning. Beware Cynthia Weaver. The former Lady of the Light now rots within Valhalla, withered by time. Approach the former Lady of the Light, and she vanishes in a terrifying flash, confirming Odin's grim prophecy. Amidst this decaying ward, another familiar voice lingers, Pat Main, the aging radio host from a bygone era. He still broadcasts into the void, broadcasting not from a studio, but a sterile nursing home room. Time and dementia have eroded his mind. His once smooth monologues now dissolve into confused, rambling whispers of a forgotten past. On the third floor, a locked door bears a cryptic spiral. Reach for the handle, and Ahti materializes from the shadows. He warns Saga to curb her dangerous curiosity, whispering that all things happen in due time. Saga corners Rose, tearing through her innocent facade. She demands access to the wellness center, citing Tor's mysterious hospitalization. When the nurse plays dumb, Saga wields her FBI authority like a blade, forcing the woman's reluctant compliance. The wellness center looms as a modern, sterile annex to Valhalla, yet inside, a suffocating darkness reigns. The halls are abandoned, no doctors, no patients. Even Tor's hospital bed lies empty, the sheets cold and undisturbed. Tearing away his bandages, a delirious Tor roams the empty corridors, howling his twisted devotion to Cynthia Weaver. The other residents whisper he acts like a lovesick teenager, a grotesque infatuation seemingly confirmed by Odin's grim warnings. This is no late-in-life romance. It is pure, unadulterated madness. Chasing the old man, Saga breaches the security room to unlock the facility. In the shadows, a grotesque new horror emerges, a diver, its body sickeningly mirrored. Surviving the monstrosity, Saga reaches the courtyard. A manic Tor wades into a blood-red pond, the unmistakable glow of an overlap. Rose scolds him from the shore, but the old man vanishes into the watery nightmare. Rose immediately plays the fool, insisting Tor is safely resting. The blatant lie shatters Saga's iron composure. Cursing, the agent dives deep into her profiling, unearthing a secret. Rose received a cryptic message from Alan Wake himself. The prophecy claimed a hero would arrive, uttering, "Wake returns." Saga speaks the password, and Rose erupts in manic joy. The nurse's sabotage ends. Recognizing her savior, she hands over a manuscript page meant only for Saga. Rose surrenders her keys to the locked wards. She is no mere delusional fangirl. She is the new Lady of the Light, inheriting the sacred mantle from a broken Cynthia Weaver after the events of the past. Once Alan Wake's most obsessive admirer in Bright Falls, Rose was briefly corrupted by the darkness, manipulated into drugging Alan and Barry Wheeler. Years have passed, and her fractured mind has settled into a fragile, unsettling normalcy. Normalcy, by her own twisted metrics. She still obsessively consumes Wake's literature, her mind forever tethered to the dark place. Knowing the horrors of Cauldron Lake, Rose eagerly embraced the mantle of the Lady of the Light. When Cynthia's mind finally shattered, Rose stepped into the void. Armed with visions she believed were sent by Alan himself, she learned the brutal art of slaughtering the taken, embracing her bloody duty with terrifying devotion. The cult of the tree are not the only guardians here. Rose has been hunting shadows, scattering Alex Casey lunchboxes filled with supplies to aid her relentless, bloody crusade against the encroaching creatures of the dark. Inside the Alex Casey lunchboxes, alongside manuscript fragments used to empower our arsenal, Rose leaves her own bizarre offerings. She tucks away amateur fanfiction, spinning wild tales where she battles the undead before her dream man arrives to praise her. The devoted fan hopes these stories might pull Alan from the dark place, but the lake's ancient magic ignores such trivial ink. Knowing Saga might uncover these caches, Rose swaps her fiction for desperate words of encouragement. The girl seems unhinged, yet she fully understands she is merely a character in this grim narrative, entirely unbothered. Willing to sacrifice anything to please her idol. Returning to the grim task at hand, Rose's page instructs Saga on breaching the overlap to rescue Tor. The required artifact is a vinyl record. But to locate this vinyl, Saga must interrogate Odin within her mind place. He confesses that beneath Tor's reckless exterior beats a heavy heart. Decades ago, the old man deeply wronged his daughter, Freya. Freya, Saga's own mother, fled this cursed town with her infant daughter in tow. Our detective truly belongs to these shadowy woods, though her mind has buried that first year of life. The Anderson brothers suffered broken hearts over Freya's bitter departure, yet they knew the exile was necessary. Still, guilt gnawed at Tor's soul. Seeking redemption and a desperate apology for his daughter and granddaughter, he and Odin recorded the haunting ballad, Anger's Remorse. Pressed onto a singular, irreplaceable vinyl, it rests in the Valhalla Nursing Home Museum. Yet, upon our arrival, the artifact is missing, stolen from its display. Predictably, our grandfather was lured into the overlap by a corrupted Cynthia Weaver. The former Lady of the Light suffers a tragic fate, stealing the record to silence Tor. Saga ruthlessly deploys her mental profiling to interrogate Weaver. The psychic interrogation yields dark fruit. The vinyl lies submerged in Cynthia's bathtub. Much like Nightingale's heart, the artifact materializes precisely where it must. Yet, the room's threshold remains barred to us. As Valhalla's power grid treacherously fails, the electronic locks hold fast, forcing Saga down into a pitch-black flooded basement to replace a blown fuse. With the electricity restored, we resume our desperate attempt to breach Cynthia's sanctuary, uncovering the remnants of her tragic decline. Over 13 agonizing years, she withered, passing her luminous burden to Rose. Confined to the nursing home, her obsession with the light persisted, constantly replacing every dying bulb while clutching her cherished lantern. Tor Anderson harbored genuine affection for Cynthia, though not enough to scream her name down empty halls. Yet Weaver's heart belongs solely to the vanished poet, Thomas Zane. Lost to the shadows of the 70s, but reality fractures here. Recent revelations expose Thomas Zane as a European filmmaker, rendering the poet a mere fictional construct. Yet Cynthia remains fiercely convinced that Thomas was always a poet, violently rejecting his cinematic truth. Her undying love never wavered as she patiently awaited his impossible return. But time is a cruel thief. Cynthia grew frail, her aging mind unraveling. In her creeping senility, she misplaces her most treasured possession, the lamp. Stripped of its protection, her desperate yearning for Tom intensifies until she feels his phantom presence. The dark presence seizes upon this tragic vulnerability, luring her into a fatal snare. Hearing Tom's deceptive call, Cynthia slips into a bathtub brimming with black water and drowns. The darkness claims her entirely, weaponizing her hollowed shell to infect the aging Tor, who, despite his Anderson blood, recognizes the manipulation, but lacks the youthful strength to resist. The corrupted Cynthia drags the old rocker into the overlap, severing his connection to Saga. Curiously, the fateful disappearance of the lamp that triggered Weaver's grim transformation is no mere accident. Rose stole it. This is not the mundane kerosene lantern Cynthia always carried, but the mythical lamp of Thomas Zane himself, one of the few relics tethering Cynthia to her vanished lover. We know it by another name, the Angel Lamp. Though its switch was torn away to become the clicker, rendering it broken, it still shielded Cynthia from the encroaching dark. Yet the lamp shields Cynthia from the dark, much like the clicker once warded off little Alan's nightmares. Desperate in the dark place, Wake sends visions to Rose, who blindly steals the artifact, sealing it in a shoebox. She casts the box into the nursing home pond, an inexplicable portal born of her lingering taint. Rose fulfills her idol's desperate plea, but in doing so, she condemns a helpless soul to the creeping shadows. Cynthia is doomed to a grim fate. The history of Valhalla Nursing Home inevitably exhumes the name of Thomas Zane, a Finnish art house director truly named Thomas Sen, who crafted a haunting psychological thriller titled White Night. The film brings him global acclaim. In the 60s, Zane and Barbara Jagger arrive in Bright Falls, erecting a lakeside mansion turned creative retreat named Ocean View, where he soon begins drafting his next cinematic descent. He titles this new endeavor Tom the Poet, and the plot sickens with familiarity. A deep-sea diver loses his lover to a mystical lake, only for her to claw her way back as a monstrous entity. The casting itself is a twisted mirror. Thomas Zane plays the diver, Barbara Jagger embodies the dark presence, Cynthia Weaver is the Lady of the Light, and Emil Hartman assists. Yet, the most disorienting truth remains hidden. The script adapts a novel by Alan Wake, A Man Not Yet Born. Setting that paradox aside, the tragic tale of Zane and Barbara was merely this film's plot, breathed into horrific reality by Cauldron Lake. The actors are cursed to live their roles. Cynthia Weaver becomes the Lady of the Light, eternally pining for Zane the Poet. As for the Ocean View Hotel, its immediate fate after his disappearance remains swallowed by time. Half a century later, Barry Wheeler purchases the decaying estate with old God's funds, transforming the grand mansion into a secluded nursing home for Tor and Odin Anderson, alongside other aging relics of Bright Falls. The former Ocean View is now Valhalla Nursing Home, the very halls Saga prowls. Returning to the grim present, she discovers a vinyl record discarded in Cynthia's bathtub, a crucial key waiting to be played. Saga descends, dispatches another taken diver, and sets the needle on the record. The pond's overlap tears open, dragging her into the suffocating concrete veins of an old military bunker, a place steeped in dark history. A grim tragedy anchors this overlap. Years ago, a 15-year-old girl named Nora Hesberg drowned in these flooded depths while exploring with friends, a senseless accident that forever tainted the cold bunker walls. The victim's age and Swedish name mirror Logan, Saga's daughter. The dark manuscript seeks to repeat this tragedy. Navigating the looping, flooded labyrinth, Saga spots Cynthia dragging Tor into the abyss before the lights violently die. The generator is dead, and Cynthia stalks the black water. Saga restores the power, banishing the shadows, and finally puts the corrupted old woman to rest. Victorious, she confronts Alan's projection, demanding answers about her daughter. Saga begs this past echo of Wake to spare her daughter, but he cannot comprehend. In reality, she vows to force his hand with the clicker. A surviving Tor finally confirms her profiling is a supernatural bloodline gift. This gift pierces lies and resists the writer's altered reality. Tor confesses his failures as a father to Freya, blaming Saga's unnamed calculating father for fracturing the family, driving Freya to flee with her infant daughter. Freya hid their cursed lineage, dismissing Saga's mind place as mere imagination to protect her. Now dead, Freya's shield has failed, yet Tor insists the clicker, wielded by a true writer, can rewrite even this bleakest tragedy. Tor cryptically calls the author Tom, pledging the old god's aid whenever she calls. Armed with the absolute certainty that Logan lives, Saga defies her suspension, storming the FBC headquarters with a vengeance. She seeks Agent Estevez at the sheriff's station, now a makeshift FBC base after a catastrophic breach. Finding Estevez wounded amidst a massacre orchestrated by the encroaching shadow, Saga learns one crucial detail. They found Alex Casey. Casey waits in the morgue, touched by darkness, but still fighting. He claims his wounds are minor, but as Saga pierces his mind with her gift, she uncovers a grim truth he desperately tries to hide. The darkness festers inside Alex, a ticking bomb waiting to detonate. Casey has witnessed the malevolent shadow firsthand, confirming Wake's reality-warping nightmare. Saga shares her grim discoveries from Watery, revealing how the very fabric of existence twists. Reality reshapes itself, painting Logan as a tragic casualty. When Alex sorrowfully insists her daughter died long ago, Saga realizes the cursed manuscript claims him too. Restoring the lights, she confronts Alan, while a caged Ilmo spits venom. Jacko begs her to eliminate the writer, but only Wake can sever this nightmare. Trapped in his old cell, Alan endures Saga's fury, promising Logan salvation if she surrenders the clicker before time bleeds out. Scratch is closing in. Extracting a desperate vow for Logan's life, Anderson presents the clicker. Suddenly, agony fractures Wake's mind, twisting him into the monstrous Scratch. Yako spits a lethal threat, but the dark entity lunges forward. Phasing through the iron bars, Scratch strikes Yako dead, leaving Ilmo paralyzed by horror. Wearing the victim's blood, the monster hunts Saga for the clicker. She flees into the courtyard, where Agent Estevez radios a desperate tactical lifeline. 3 generators must awaken the blinding spotlights. Scratch is immortal, but enough brute force buys precious seconds. As the triad of beams finally ignites, the intersecting light traps the monstrous entity, draining his dark, unfathomable power. With a contemptuous glare and a promise of return, Scratch vanishes into the ether. Realizing she has been masterfully played, a bewildered Saga retreats to the precinct, joining Casey and Estevez to dissect the grim, unfolding nightmare. The bitter truth surfaces. The man they trusted was Mr. Scratch, wearing Alan's face to steal the clicker. Saga channels her psychic gift to unravel the fiend's design, but probing a demon's mind is a perilous, suffocating descent. The dark presence repels her psychic intrusion with overwhelming force. Sifting through Alan's fragmented whispers, Anderson faces a chilling revelation. Wake never escaped the dark place. He remains a damned prisoner, drowning in the abyss. Desperate for a lifeline, Saga demands the FBC's classified files. Cornered by the encroaching shadows, Kieran Estevez shatters protocol, temporarily drafting Anderson and Casey into the secretive ranks of the Bureau to combat the supernatural tide. Estevez hands over the key to a vault of forbidden knowledge. Saga plunges into the Bureau's classified archives, unearthing dark truths and confirming a lingering suspicion. Alan Wake is far more than a mere mortal writer. Wake is a paratiliterian, a dangerous reality bender, guilty of countless supernatural crimes. Pinning the grim facts in her mind place, Saga consults her grandfather. Thor reveals a desperate gamble. True art can drag the writer from the abyss. The clicker breathes life into soulful art. Harnessing Cauldron Lake's dark magic, Saga plots to summon the author to rewrite their doom. She orders Estevez to airlift heavy containment gear to the cursed shore, with Casey riding shotgun. While Casey takes to the skies with Kieran, Saga hunts for the perfect masterpiece. She calls upon the old gods of Asgard. Thor and Odin are already armed and rolling, ready to forge a heavy metal salvation for Wake. Thor promises a legendary anthem. Before departing, Saga finds a broken Ilmo mourning Yako's bloody corpse. Crushed by guilt, he confesses the tragic truth behind the cult of the tree, closing the grim chapter on their misguided crusade. Saga urges Ilmo to keep defending Bright Falls. The dark waters of Cauldron Lake have a vicious habit of resurrecting old tragedies, twisting local folklore into bloody reality through feverish dreams that slowly bleed into the waking world. Haunted by visions of slaughtering his own brother, Ilmo fought the lake's insidious script. He fiercely resisted the ancient curse of the Hotari legend, proving the Koskela bloodline harbored a stubborn resilience their doomed ancestors never possessed. Armed with fierce Finnish resolve, they defied the curse, yet death still claimed Yako. Now, the dark narrative hungers for Logan. Calling her husband, Saga hears only venom. The twisted thriller has poisoned David's mind with grief. David coldly severs their bond. Time is bleeding out. Reaching Cauldron Lake, Saga finds the Bureau chopper waiting. Thor and Odin smash their tour bus through the haunted pines, armed with a killer chorus and righteous fury. Atop their battered bus, the old gods tune their instruments of war. Spotlights and a steel cage await Scratch's arrival. With Estevez and Casey providing lethal overwatch, Saga signals the aging rockers to unleash absolute sonic hell. The aging rockers launch into dark ocean summoning. A spectral vision blooms, the old gods of Asgard, restored to their prime alongside dead guitarist Bob Boulder. The heavy chords draw hordes of the Taken, swarming Saga from the shadows. Echoing the bloody stage fight at the Anderson farm, the lyrics chronicle a creator trapped in the dark ocean's freezing depths. Madness encroaches as the shadows seek to enslave him, yet the song beckons him toward the light. The melody urges the creator to flee the city of dreams and save his soul. Thor and Odin know exactly what they conjure. This isn't the first time the old gods of Asgard have played Cauldron Lake's shores. Their awareness of this nightmare is unsettling. Strangely, the chorus promises to call the creator by name, yet that name remains unspoken. Are they singing to Alan, or another doomed soul sharing his tragic fate? Or perhaps both? Are they the same man? The song bleeds out, its blistering solo sacrificed to the summoning ritual. Saga flips the switch. Alan materializes on the shore, only to vanish instantly. The perfect ritual fails. The writer slips away. Where is Wake? Trapped in the dark place, Alan awakens in his writer's room. The first draft of initiation failed. The dark presence thwarted his escape. Yet he uncovered a vital secret. Another manuscript exists, titled Return. Wake cannot remember writing it, but its weight presses upon his mind. He must find Return. Drafting a second version of Initiation, he seeks a new murder site to reach Parliament Tower and protect Alice from her tormentor. Mr. Scratch still hunts her. Back in the green room, the television flickers. Mr. Door stands beside Alan, announcing a bizarre pivot. Alan's life story will unfold as a grand musical, Herald of Darkness. We watch, mesmerized. The show begins. This is the game's most infamous spectacle, a viral fever dream. Even those who never walked Alan's dark path have witnessed this madness online, or seen the music video bleeding into the real world. Or perhaps they saw it performed live at the Game Awards. For the record, this musical serves multiple purposes. First, it shatters the expectations of anyone bracing for grim survival horror, ambushing them with a neon-lit theatrical spectacle. Second, it delivers pure fan service. Where else can you witness Sam Lake dancing like a possessed man? Ilka Villi, as Alan Wake, moves with a fiery rhythm, making those absurd Fortnite crossover skins feel strangely prophetic. Third, it injects a shot of adrenaline. The game's slow, suffocating dread is suddenly pierced by flashing lights, a catchy anthem, frantic gunfights, and a twisted sense of humor. It is a chaotic break from the gloom. This level offers a brief, manic release. Fourth, it serves a deep narrative purpose. Alan navigates a surreal soundstage, while massive screens project live action footage, blurring the lines between his reality and the twisted script he inhabits. The screens reveal Mr. Door, Alan, and the old gods of Asgard, portrayed by poets of the fall, performing a grand rock opera. Acting as the charismatic host, Mr. Door interrogates the writer about his fractured past. Alan answers, and the lyrics become a haunting recap of his original nightmare. The song details the clicker, his childhood terrors, and the mother who gifted him that small device to banish monsters lurking in the dark. It sings of the fame that suffocated him, driving him to kill off his protagonist and plunge into bitter writer's block. It recounts the fateful vacation to Bright Falls with his wife, where the true horror began. Alan was dragged into a war between light and shadow, ultimately trapped in the dark place. The song is not just a performance, it is a desperate clue, reminding Wake of what he must remember to escape. The lyrics emphasize his prophetic visions and the clicker's true power, not just banishing nightmares, but forging reality from fiction. The chorus reveals a grim truth. The champion of light and the herald of darkness are bound. They walk hand in hand. To break the surface, the prisoner of this endless night must paradoxically dive deeper into the abyss. Notably, just like in Dark Ocean Summoning, performed by the old gods, a crucial detail vanishes. Alan Wake's name is never spoken, despite both songs being about him. Instead, Herald of Darkness invokes Thomas Zane, suggesting Alan is merely walking in Zane's doomed footsteps, their tragic fates mirroring each other in the dark. Their fates mirror one another. Odin and Thor, across all Remedy games, never call Wake by his true name, branding him Tom. Once dismissed as senile dementia, this quirk now hides a darker truth. Knowing the Anderson family's true power, this misnaming becomes a sinister clue. Wandering through the surreal sets, Alan steps onto a talk show stage, joining Mr. Door, Sam Lake, and a crowd of hollow extras. They dance to the live, thundering chords of the old Gods of Asgard. Wake retreats for coffee, sinking into a sofa, only to awaken in an empty studio where Ahti mops the floor, humming softly. Ahti croons the melody of the Herald of Darkness. Leaving through the front doors, Alan realizes he is the center of this spectacle, yet entirely powerless, dancing with a bewildered face as if bound by another's script. A ringing payphone shatters the silence. An unknown voice probes Alan's fractured memory, rejoicing when Wake mentions the Return Manuscript. "That is exactly what we need," the stranger whispers, sensing a shift in the shadows. The world's survival hinges on Return. Scratch must never claim it. The caller invites Alan to room 6065 at the Ocean View Hotel, leaving a key nearby, warning that the dark place operates on cyclical, inescapable rituals. If blocked, Alan must forge a new path. This Ocean View is no roadside motel from Control, nor the Valhalla nursing home. Here, in the dark place, it looms as a towering, oppressive New York high-rise. Alan attempts the main doors, but the hotel's warped corridors spit him back onto the cold street. Recalling his mysterious ally's advice, the writer follows the bleeding neon signs, seeking a hidden, treacherous detour. The detour drags him into a grim alleyway, where Detective Casey waits. This time, Alex is hostile. He slams the suspect against the brick wall, accusing Wake of leading a vicious, blood-soaked murder cult. Alan blames Scratch, but the detective remains unyielding. A sudden nightmare flashes. Alan draws a revolver and shoots Alex in the gut, literally murdering his own creation, echoing the metaphorical end of his final detective novel. Fatally wounded, Casey collapses onto the wet asphalt, delivering a delirious noir monologue about his endless exhaustion. Even in the original English, his dying words spiral into pure madness, leaving only one chilling clue behind. His final breath reveals, "The writer and I, we were the same." To survive initiation, Alan must wear the detective's skin, riding the narrative's dark current. With Casey dead, Wake usurps his role in the story. The detour leads over rain-slicked rooftops. Cracking a door code, Alan infiltrates the Ocean View's 6th floor. Inside room 6065, he finds a desolate space anchored by a solitary projector, casting a ghostly light. The projector flickers to life, showing our hero before a door. Just like Mr. Door's television, Alan is sucked into the celluloid illusion, stepping through to find room 6065, transformed into a fully furnished hotel suite. In the adjacent room, a half-naked man in leather pants stands upon the bed. The mysterious stranger is Thomas Zane. Snatching a jacket and a lamp, he dramatically recites a verse from the poet Tom. Zane's face is a clean-shaven mirror of Alan's own. He joyfully welcomes Wake. This isn't their first encounter in this room, though Alan forgets. Jesse witnessed them here during the events of Control, peering through a doorway. A spiral painting marks the very same room where Jesse saw them. It was then Thomas first confessed he was no poet, but a filmmaker. Now, as the two creators cross paths once more in the dark, Zane explains that Tom the poet is merely a character. The guiding light from Alan's past was just a fiction brought to life by the dark place, much like Alex Casey. The real Thomas Zane is vastly different. He is arrogant, deeply narcissistic, yet undeniably charismatic. When Alan asks why they share a face, the director smirks. Perhaps Alan looks like Tom. With no time for riddles, Wake cuts straight to the bleeding truth. Alan demands answers about the Return Manuscript. Zane tells him to relax, sinking into the sofa. He reveals both creators are trapped in the same sinking ship, collaborating to forge a key for the door to freedom. The key to freedom lies in a twisted collaboration, Wake's manuscript of Return, completed by Zane's film. Their joint creation promises a profound fusion of cinema and literature, before Tom and Alan descend into bizarre, drunken revelry. They drink and grimace to the happy song, the very tune Mr. Scratch danced to in American Nightmare. Alan demands Zane focus, terrified that Alice is in grave danger, but Thomas calmly reassures the frantic writer. Thomas insists Alice remains safe in the real New York. Though Scratch hunts her through the overlap, their sole focus must be finding the Return Manuscript, their only ticket to freedom, which must never fall into Scratch's hands. Somewhere in the Ocean View Hotel lies a grisly murder scene Alan needs to reach Parliament Tower. Suddenly, their conversation shatters as the television flickers to life, briefly revealing Jesse Faden, Dr. Darling, and the Night Springs logo. The FBC director's sudden appearance likely mirrors the exact moment Jesse peered behind the door in Control's DLC. The game leaves the dark connection between the Ocean View hotels of these fractured realities entirely shrouded in mystery. Did Jesse's past attempt to enter their room only just reach the dark place? Or have the writer and director lingered in room 665 countless times, with Jesse witnessing merely one of their many shadowed encounters? Her intrusion pierces every meeting simultaneously, like a rusty nail driven through a notebook's pages. Furthermore, both Control and Alan Wake 2 feature this very television broadcast, displaying Darling and the eerie Night Springs intro. Perhaps this mystery will be solved, or perhaps it remains forever abandoned. The broadcast triggers a paranoid fit in Thomas. Terrified they are being watched, he abruptly ends the conversation, leaving Alan to return to his story. The writer hunts for fresh inspiration. A dark vision of Alex Casey reveals a grim new crime scene at the Ocean View Hotel, centered around a theatrical play about a murderous cult that committed the very same atrocity. Casey's gut blames the cult of the word and Mr. Scratch. Alan begins his scene in the lobby, observing Casey interrogate a director resembling Ed Booker about an immersive, legendary underground play simply titled Cult. The lost script is passed down through whispers, performed only once per troupe. Rumored to summon the devil, the play initially focused on the tree cult, but the Ocean View's blood-soaked history of murders and rituals twisted everything. During rehearsals, actors accidentally summon the real cult of the word. The narrative spirals into a nightmare about the devil rewriting reality while God sleeps, starring a masked, nameless celebrity who never breaks his sinister character. Casey suspects this masked devil is Scratch, holed up in room 666. Upstairs, Alan watches Casey and Ed discuss the play's murdered victim, an elderly actress who claimed to be the original author's true muse. Scratch joined the cast solely to hunt this muse in room 108. A dark presence ambushes Alan in 666, but he escapes into the light. Descending to 108, a fleeting vision suddenly overtakes his shattered senses. The vision reveals the concrete bunker corridors Saga navigates while rescuing Tor. Just as the Cauldron Lake overlap mirrored Alan's subway nightmare, Saga's nursing home ordeal bleeds directly into the haunted halls of the Ocean View. These adjacent stories collide as Alan finds the muse, Cynthia Weaver, drowned in a bathtub. Her body vanishes alongside the Anger's remorse record, which materializes in the real world for Saga to eventually discover. Next, Alan faces his scheduled rendezvous in the dark with Agent Anderson. We witness their dialogue from the writer's perspective. Saga's furious protests about her daughter being written into the horror never even reach his ears. Instead, he babbles about Alice's peril and his desperate need to find Return. The fractured conversation collapses into static, yet Alan realizes that Saga Anderson is somehow guiding him back to the waking world. Parliament Tower looms once more, and the writer attempts another journey home. The elevator rises, camera flashes greet his arrival, but the apartment has shifted, rearranged by Alice as she meticulously prepares her haunting photography exhibition. Alice accompanies her exhibits with autobiographical videos, detailing her agonizing life after her husband's presumed death. Barry Wheeler offered crucial support, and though he has moved out west, he still checks on the grieving widow. His grieving wife finally finds her resolve through pure chance, a cartoon deer balloon drifting past her window. Below, a weeping girl mourns its loss. Witnessing this profound, mundane tragedy compels Alice to wield her camera once more. Seizing that elusive spark of inspiration, Alice finally grasps a concept. She suspects a dark, boundless world exists beyond our reality, and realizes photography can freeze time, sealing even the infinite within a single frame. Determined to expose the supernatural, Alice devises a plan. Meanwhile, Alan is drawn into the television, manifesting at the writer's room threshold. The room stands empty, no dead Alan at the desk, only a massive stack of paper. It is the manuscript for Return, authored by Alan Wake. Reading it, the writer recoils in horror. The plot unleashes the dark presence upon Bright Falls and beyond. Alan would never write such garbage, but Scratch gladly would. If Return becomes reality, Scratch will permanently usurp Alan's life and continue his slaughter. Unable to allow this, the writer resolves to edit the manuscript, a grueling task of twisting Scratch's source material without breaking the genre's rigid rules. To combat the evil within the book, Wake needs a hero. Since Saga Anderson appeared in his visions and was already entangled in Bright Falls without being part of Return, he writes the agents into the narrative. This is why most manuscript pages mentioning Saga feature handwritten edits adding her name. The typewritten pages bearing her identity are entirely new additions to the story, hammered out by Alan himself to shift the dark narrative. We once believed Scratch was altering Alan's story to make it darker, but the truth is inverted. Wake is the one editing Scratch's text, desperately trying to fix the grim thriller, burying the original horrors beneath his ink. But Alan writes too slowly to finish the edits. Suddenly, another Alan bursts into the room, enraged and armed with a revolver, swiftly putting a bullet in our hero's head. The pieces of the bloody puzzle finally align. The dead Alan from the first draft of Initiation was actually the Alan from the second. Waking in his room, the writer realizes his murderer was Scratch, desperate to stop the edits. Now, the Dark Double sits there. Scratch now occupies that room, likely erasing Alan's edits to realize his sinister plans. The writer must return to Parliament Tower to outpace the villain, and to do that, he must forge a new path through the nightmare. He must write a third draft of Initiation. Remembering Thomas Zane's lie about co-authoring Return, Wake seeks out the filmmaker for answers. The journey begins in a flooded dressing room, leading to a desolate, empty television stage. The studio is dark and abandoned. Mr. Dorr sits in the gloom, unsmiling. When Alan demands the truth, Dorr states, Wake only had to play his part, but the writer insists on complicating everything with endless, looping rules. Dorr reveals that many, including Alice, are helping Wake. Alan panics, insisting she needs saving, but Dorr coldly retorts that Alice is endangered because of Alan. Furious that Wake involved someone close to him, Dorr refuses further aid. Warned to stay out of Dorr's way, Alan is left in darkness. Fleeing shadows through flooded corridors, he finds sanctuary with Ahti. The janitor again calls him Tom, speaking as if Wake is the filmmaker Thomas Zane himself. Shifting focus to Parliament Tower, Alan learns of 2 photographs hidden in the basement shoebox, kept safe by Ahti. Retrieving them, images of a clicker and a bullet of light, Alan instantly recognizes the distinct photographic style. The photos were taken by his wife. Knowing their importance, he pockets them and exits. Outside, a vision of Alex Casey reveals the detective's investigation into the cult of the word has led him straight to Thomas Zane. Casey describes Zane as a violent, controlling bohemian, a perfect cult leader profile, leading the detective to suspect Zane is Scratch. Wake follows suit, eager to confront the filmmaker about his lies and uncover the next murder site. Entering room 665, Alan steps into the projector's image, holding a bound Thomas at gunpoint. Confronted about Return, Zane claims Alan had given up on creating, deeming it too dangerous, which allowed the eager Scratch to step in. Scratch promised Zane freedom, but betrayed him after writing Return. Admitting his mistake, Zane begs Alan to find the manuscript before Scratch escapes the dark place and reaches Alice, urging him to kill the bastard at Poet's Cinema. The murder unfolds at Poet's Cinema, screening Zane's Nightless Night, paving Alan's path to Parliament Tower. Thomas flaunts his directorial power inside the projector's reel, proving the filmmaker rules here, forcing Alan to brace himself. Alan steadies his trembling hands and shoots Zane through the skull. Snatching a cinema ticket from his dead counterpart's pocket, he steps back into the tale. yet Zane casually lifts his head, entirely unharmed. Zane recites a poem from Tom the Poet's repertoire, concluding the take with a satisfied, "That's true drama." The director orchestrated this entire bloody spectacle, craving a flawless, agonizing performance under his absolute creative control. Just as Alan dies endlessly in the dark place per his script, Zane shares this immortal curse. Leaving Ocean View, Wake follows W-shaped spotlights to Poet's cinema, presenting his ticket to find an echoing vision of Alex Casey. Casey confesses the cult of the wood became his life's obsession, spiraling into pure absurdity. While the first draft mirrored a gritty detective tale featuring corrupt cops resembling Mulligan and Thornton, the third descends into transcendental madness. Reality's Mulligan and Thornton doomed themselves through fanatical devotion. In Initiation, these detectives uncover the cult of the word in the subway, then actively destroy hotel evidence to protect the murderers, fully succumbing to the darkness. The cult invites the corrupted cops to the cinema for a dark initiation. Casey interrogates a cultist resembling Ilmo Koskela, demanding the leader's identity, Wake, Scratch, or Zane. The fanatic merely promises an imminent meeting with the master. Zane's Finnish masterpiece, Nightless Night, serves as the cult's holy relic. The fanatic urges Casey to watch the sole surviving print, promising a role written exclusively for the detective, as a flickering scene bleeds onto the screen. Casey's face materializes on the silver screen alongside Zane, who wields his angelic lamp. Channeling our light into Tom's cinematic device, we tear open a surreal gateway, stepping directly into a desolate, shadow-drenched alleyway. A sickening thud echoes as a body plummets from the roof in a fractured vision. Wake ascends to investigate, while a terrified Casey, seeing his own cinematic reflection, holds the cultist at gunpoint, demanding impossible answers. The laughing cultist promises Casey a meeting with the master before plunging to his death. We rewrite the theater scene, following the Grandmaster through a spiral door directly into the screen, plunging Wake into a cinematic labyrinth. Navigating the projector maze, Wake hears Casey's maddened screams. He discovers actor Sam Lake bound to a chair, wearing a deer mask, begging Alan not to use the knife, a grim metaphor for the author's bloody creative process. To forge his path to Parliament Tower, Wake constantly penned grim murders, playing both the investigating detective and the ruthless killer. Now, the dark place demands he slaughter a man with his own hands, feeling the visceral weight. As Alan grasps the blade, Lake breaks free, vanishing into the labyrinth. Wake presses on, glimpsing Coffee World's reflection, proving this nightmare aligns with Saga Anderson's pursuit of Mulligan and Thornton, though the twisted timelines barely synchronize. Time in the dark place coils like a spiral, shattering reality's linear flow. Saga's overlaps with Wake's drafts arrive out of sequence, tangling the Cauldron Lake, Watery, and nursing home events into a beautifully chaotic, intersecting narrative web. The labyrinth yields a vision, shattering the fourth wall. The Grandmaster thanks Casey for playing his fictional role, luring his author, Alan. Yet the maddened detective refuses to leave without knowing how he entered the film. Denying Casey answers, the Master taunts Alan. If Wake assumed a fictional detective's role, is the writer himself merely a character in another story? The Master vanishes, leaving Alan to discover the slaughtered cops nearby. The cult arranged the corpses to mirror Saga's carnival float. Transferring a moose skull to reality to aid her, Wake confesses Scratch hijacked the manuscript. He made Saga the horror novel's heroine, praying she can save her family. Remedy actually filmed a 15-minute Finnish short, Nightless Night, viewable in-game. It follows Detective Aleksi Kesa reuniting with Ahti the Janitor before courting Barbara Jagger, the widow of missing writer Alan Bako, amidst encounters with local thugs. Kesa suspects a sadistic writer trapped him in a looping narrative. Ignoring Ahti's warnings about Barbara's connection to the dark, the detective meets her in the nocturnal woods, where she drugs him with hallucinogenic water before shadows strike. Masked cultists ambush Alex Casey, sacrificing him to a dark ritual. Alan Wake, played by Thomas Zane, emerges from the well, leaving the detective trapped in the shadows, to realize this is no loop, but a spiral. Zane's promised supplement to the Return Manuscript mirrors the unfolding nightmare. The real FBI agent, Alex Casey, is no mere sidekick to Saga Anderson. He is the crucial key to freeing the writer, perhaps even the ultimate sacrifice. The fictional Casey surrenders to the postmodern madness, drowning his defeat in alcohol before his next New York case. Meanwhile, Alan abandons the theater, drawn toward Parliament Tower by the haunting, relentless ring of a lone payphone. Lifting the receiver, Alan hears not Zane, but his own voice echoing back. The future Wake explains that time in the dark place only flows when the story demands it, calling himself from a page yet unwritten. Will Wake ever escape this shadowy prison? The future Alan claims the choice remains his own, instructing him to place the photographs salvaged from the talk show basement into a shoebox waiting by the plaza's silent statue. This simple act promises salvation for the writer, his wife Alice, and Saga Anderson. Before Alan can mock his own Deus Ex Machina, the line goes dead. Following the cryptic orders, he approaches the statues at Parliament Tower. Where his own effigy once stood, Alice's statue now looms. He drops the photos at her feet, and Parliament Tower's doors swing open. Riding the elevator up, Alan finds the apartment hollow, entirely stripped of his wife's presence. A feral growl and the frantic clack of a typewriter bleed from his old office. Realizing Scratch is erasing his desperate edits to Return, Alan searches the desolate rooms, uncovering a projector from Alice's haunting photography exhibition. A video plays, revealing a broken Alice. Her attempts to capture her husband on film only ever immortalized a monster wearing Alan's face. Crushed by the horrific truth, she abandoned the camera, shifting the perspective of her art. Transitioning from photographer to subject, Alice Wake became the tragic centerpiece of her own exhibit. The recording coldly reveals that shortly after the gallery closed, she took her own life, ending the tape with her final, fatal photographs. The images show Alice stepping off a jagged cliff into the abyss. Horrified by her death, Alan blames Scratch for driving her to suicide, realizing she spent years believing her own husband was the one tormenting her. Bursting into the writer's room, fueled by pure hatred, Alan spots Scratch at the desk, ruthlessly crossing out the edits to Return. He raises his gun and executes the villain, only to realize a terrifying, mind-bending truth. He has lived this exact moment from the other side of the gun. Trapped in a vicious loop, Alan discovers there is no evil double. Scratch was never in Parliament Tower, and he just murdered his past self. Alice was only ever haunted by Alan's desperate, ghostly attempts to return home. His own frantic actions drove her to suicide. Lost in endless narrative cycles, the writer became his own worst enemy, sabotaging his own escape. Failing to finish his edits to Return, Alan watches helplessly as the dark presence breaches the room. The shadowy parasite violently invades his body, dropping the writer to the floor, just as a ritual triggers in reality. The summoning ritual, orchestrated by Saga and the old gods of Asgard, rips Wake and the parasitic darkness into the real world. The scattered pages of Return, found during the agent's investigation, bleed into reality alongside him. The song successfully summoned Wake, but the ritual displaced him in time, washing him ashore right after Saga defeated Nightingale. There was no imposter. The man she found was truly Alan, harboring a dormant evil within his flesh. The dark presence lurked inside, waiting to seize control and become Scratch. Years ago, to escape his initial capture, Alan wrote himself as the protagonist of Departure, exploiting the narrative rules to confidently stand against the encroaching shadows. Knowing the dark presence cannot create, only manipulate, he outsmarted his captor. Yet, bound by the rigid laws of the genre, Wake had to sacrifice himself to save Alice. Now, the most obvious path to escape beckons again. Attempting to use the same narrative exploit seems logical, but the dark presence has learned from its past mistakes. It now possesses the writer, merging with his very soul, ensuring that any new attempt to rewrite reality fails. If Wake attempts his old trick of writing himself into the tale, the dark presence enters as Scratch. Bound by the thriller genre, Alan must chronicle this darkness, granting it terrifying power within the narrative. This loophole allows the darkness to bypass its flaw. It cannot create, but Scratch can. Thus, Scratch authors return, though it heralds not the homecoming of Alan Wake, but the dreadful resurrection of the darkness itself. Wake tries warning the agents of Scratch's escape, his fractured memories obscuring the grim truth. Scratch is Alan, corrupted by darkness. The summoning ritual fails disastrously because the rescue team never suspects Alan is already present. They assume Alan is merely possessed, believing Scratch is a separate entity. Furthermore, Alan can only escape the dark place at one specific, predestined moment, and it is not during the fateful concert on the lake. The clicker in Saga. Anderson's hands plays a vital role. Without this switch, no ritual exists. Yet, who first whispers to Saga about the clicker, driving her to hunt it down in Watery? It is Alan himself. If the writer never washes up on that shore at that precise second, Anderson never discovers the switch or performs the ritual. Thus, the only temporal anchor preserving causality is when Saga emerges from the first fold. Agent Anderson finally grasps these tangled threads when Scratch suddenly invades the lakeshore. He craves the clicker to cement the grim finale of Return into reality, launching a brutal assault on Saga to claim his prize. Realizing Scratch cannot be defeated by force alone, our protagonist plans to sever the darkness from Wake's flesh. She lures him into a specialized paranormal containment cage, hauled in by the FBC, echoing a familiar, desperate strategy. We repeat the grim dance from the Bright Falls Sheriff's Station, but instead of cranking generators, we pivot glaring floodlights toward the cage. Saga steps inside, baiting Scratch, and the moment the fiend crosses the threshold, Estevez strikes. Estevez locks the cage and ignites the lights. The blinding glare excises the darkness from Alan, but the entity's raw power shatters the containment. Saga awakens on the shore beside a drained Wake, reaching for the fallen clicker. The freed entity possesses Alex Casey, becoming Scratch anew. Snatching the clicker, he hurls Saga into the lake's dark abyss. Teleporting to Bright Falls, Scratch clicks the switch, manifesting his grim finale before discarding the device in triumph. On Cauldron Lake's shore, Alan watches Tor and Odin sink into the black waters. Calling him Tom, the brothers depart for their final gig, sacrificing themselves and begging the writer to finish his grim task in this reality. Estevez admits they are entirely alone. No Bureau reinforcements are coming. With a wounded ally and a desperate plan, Alan must infiltrate Bright Falls, find the Return Manuscript, and rewrite its ending. Armed with meager supplies, he departs. Like the old days, flashlight and gun in hand, Alan battles the Taken through the woods. His mind clears, a nostalgic echo of his past struggles returning as familiar combat music swells. Alan Wake is finally back. Ready to banish the shadows, Wake takes Saga's car toward Bright Falls. Scratch's click has merged the dark place with the town, forcing Alan to plunge back into the nightmare realm. His freedom was agonizingly brief. Escaping the dark place, he merely dragged it into reality, meaning he never truly left. Knowing it ends in tragedy, the writer steps into the shrouded streets of Bright Falls, which surprisingly lack their usual nightmarish veneer. It is a bright, sunny day, the townsfolk celebrating Deerfest. Yet, the Return Manuscript warps reality. Everyone at the festival is utterly obsessed with the book, their minds hijacked by its dark narrative as they eagerly discuss it. They praise the author's genius in a surreal meta-commentary, characters trapped within a book, lording the very pages that bind them. They are prisoners of the narrative, unknowingly dissecting the plot of their own tragic existence. Alan desperately hunts for a single copy to read the ending, but the novel's unnatural success has emptied the shelves. Against all odds, Wake uncovers the last remaining edition of Return, turning it to inspect the back cover. He sees his own photograph against a house with circular windows, mirroring the writer's room. Realizing his destination, Alan is suddenly hunted by the zombified citizens of Bright Falls, forcing him into a desperate, breathless flight for survival. Fleeing the Blade's Edge, Wake tracks down the round-windowed building from the photograph, the Valhalla nursing home. Blocked by the courtyard, He detours through the wellness center, where a fleeting vision of his wife, Alice, is abruptly shattered. The phantom of Alice dissolves as Scratch bursts forth, wearing Alex Casey's flesh. A desperate chase through the corridors ensues, ending at Valhalla's doors, where Rose waits. Wake stares, stunned to find her wandering the dark place uncorrupted. Free from the narrative's dark strings, Rose claims she arrived to help, guided by his own secret instructions. Wake recalls no such messages, but time bleeds away. He must ascend the stairs and finish his grim work. The writer's room waits on the 3rd floor, sealed behind the spiral door that once barred Saga's path. Ahti, the janitor, stands guard again, though Alan feels no surprise finding the enigmatic caretaker lurking in these shadowed halls. Spouting cryptic wisdom about the cleansing power of water, Ahti unlocks the door. Alan steps into the writer's room, desperate to draft a new chapter for Return and avert a catastrophic ending. The clock ticks relentlessly. Scratch could breach the room any time, leaving Alan paralyzed. Suddenly, a vision strikes. Wake and Saga Anderson debating the finale. In true horror tradition, salvation demands a heavy toll. The more souls saved, the steeper the hero's price. Inspired by this grim revelation, Alan strikes the typewriter keys. Saga Anderson is so deeply entangled, she has become his co-author. To forge the ending, they need the clicker. Meanwhile, Agent Anderson awakens in the field office, disoriented. Saga realizes she is trapped inside her own mind place. Every piece of evidence, every manuscript page, vanished. The dark place gnaws at her sanity, twisting her thoughts and forcing Agent Anderson to question her very worth. The shadows whisper her failures, chasing scattered pages instead of real clues, ignoring Alex's bleeding wound at Cauldron Lake, and failing as a partner. Worst of all, they taunt her as a mother, twisting the knife of guilt. They accuse her of letting her own daughter die. The darkness almost shatters her will, but Saga fights back. Clinging to cold, hard logic, she pieces her fractured mind together, affirming that her investigation was righteous and true. She knows every thread connects. She and Casey shared absolute trust, and he would never surrender to a mere scratch. Most importantly, Logan is alive. The horror is just a lie. Through sheer willpower, Saga shatters the illusion. Conquering her inner demons, Saga escapes the room. An unknown woman's voice awakens her in a fountain square within the dark place. Unlike Alan's suffocating nightmare, Saga's New York breathes with the quiet, eerie calm of early dawn. A payphone rings through the mist. It's Alice Wake, guiding her forward. She instructs Saga to find a statue at Parliament Tower and retrieve a shoebox crucial for the story's ending, hanging up before offering any further answers. Searching for Parliament Tower, Saga stumbles upon Sheriff Tim Breaker, missing since the nightmare began. While Alan met him across shifting realities, Tim confessed to vivid dreams of living under different names in entirely different worlds. One constant haunted Tim's visions: a man named Warlin Door. Sketching his face, Tim sought answers, leading his cousin Sarah to recognize Door from an 80s case. Driven by obsession, Tim relocated to Bright Falls for the truth. Clues were scarce, only an old witness claiming lightning struck Door before he vanished. Taking over as sheriff, Tim chased ghosts to no avail. But when he tried handing the manuscript pages to the FBI, Door finally struck. Door dragged Breaker into the dark place, where the sheriff crossed paths with Alan. With every encounter, Tim spun wilder theories, mapping his cosmic connection to Door on a whiteboard. His face, however, hides another Remedy secret. The actor bridges us to Quantum Break. Though corporate red tape keeps that fractured timeline out of the official universe for now, Remedy weaves heavy, undeniable hints, suggesting these legal barriers are nothing but a temporary illusion. Someday, the shattered pieces of Quantum Break will fully merge into this grand tapestry. Until then, the creators quietly lay the groundwork, whispering secrets in the shadows, hinting at a larger truth without ever speaking its name. Breaker's dreams are bleeding visions of an alternate reality, echoing the events of Quantum Break. Even his very name, Tim Breaker, hides a clever phonetic secret, linking him forever to the time-bending mysteries of his forgotten past. Adding an E births Timebreaker, a nod to Dota's Pushkin Veda, or Jack Joyce, fracturing time in Quantum Break. Polyhedrons haunt this space, alongside a certain red-haired woman. This enigmatic redhead, Beth Wilder, shares a curious echo within Remedy's universe. Courtney Hope breathes life into both Beth and Jesse Faden, another fiery soul bound to a mysterious polyhedron. Jesse Faden, the Bureau's current director, likely heard whispers of Mr. Door from her hiss-corrupted brother, Dylan. In fevered dreams, Dylan met this dark stranger, learning of endless, overlapping worlds. These worlds stack and bleed into one another. Mr. Door exists within them all, endlessly shifting through the boundaries. Quantum Break mirrors this with its own shifters, most notably one specific calculating character. That character is Martin Hatch, brought to life by Lance Reddick. Concept art suggests Reddick was meant to portray Warlin Door in Alan Wake's sequel, before his tragic, untimely passing. Though David Harewood stepped in to deliver a brilliant performance, the shadows whisper a compelling truth. Remedy's Warlin Door is simply Martin Hatch, shifting seamlessly from one dimension into another. The clues lie in his mirrored name, Warlin reflecting Martin, while Door echoes the threshold of a hatch. Even his elegant habit of adjusting his suit betrays his true nature. He masquerades as a harmless soul, yet, while Hatch played the villain in Quantum Break, Warlin Door's motives remain cloaked in fog. He aids Alan willingly, stepping into the narrative by choice. He isn't bound by Wake's script, he acts on his own desires. When the writer's madness goes too far, Mr. Door simply walks away. He even denied Dylan's hiss-corrupted ambitions entirely. Perhaps this enigmatic traveler is an ally, or merely playing a game where our goals align. Saga asks Tim for directions to Parliament Tower, but the dark place defies all mapping. Our only hope is the manuscript page Tim holds, detailing Mr. Door's impossible paths through the city. Sheriff Breaker couldn't trace those steps, but Saga might just decipher the route. The page reveals Warlin Door strolling through the dark place like a casual park. Unbound by its nightmare logic, he knowingly let Wake document his steps, willingly submitting to the story. He plays the late-night host in Wake's twisted script and Night Spring's episodes. It feels orchestrated, a deliberate trail left in the shadows for Saga to follow, and she does. Tracing his steps, Saga miraculously reaches Parliament Tower. Why does she succeed where Tim Breaker failed? The shadows have long whispered of a blood tie binding her to Mr. Door. He is her father. Beyond the striking resemblance, Saga's father vanished in 1988, the very year she was born, following a bitter, mysterious feud with the formidable Anderson brothers. The clash ended in a grim bargain. Mr. Door would spare their family, claiming the Andersons' domain later. To seal the pact, he took Odin's right eye before vanishing in a lightning strike. Odin's theatrical eye patch became a bloody reality. This violent clash between Thor, Odin, and Door is likely what drove Freya, Saga's mother, to flee the Anderson farm with her infant daughter. Fleeing Bright Falls, they left Warlin Door behind. Yet, he watched over Saga, shielding her from the darkness, until Alan Wake dragged her into his story, igniting Mr. Door's quiet fury. Saga is a formidable hybrid, half seer, half shifter, walking the dark abode like her father. Ignoring these revelations, she reaches Parliament Tower, finding the promised shoebox waiting by the silent statue. Inside, Alan's photographs of the clicker and the bullet of light have manifested into reality. Armed with them, Saga answers a ringing payphone, hearing Alice plead for the perfect ending. To help Alan forge the perfect ending for Return, Saga channels her seer abilities, reaching the writer through the mind place. They share a mental dialogue, pitching ideas to craft the true conclusion. This very dialogue, witnessed earlier as a vision, fueled Alan's inspiration. Saga needs only to deliver the clicker. Stepping into the New York fountain, she instantly teleports to the writer's room, where Alan finishes his work. Alan finishes typing the manuscript's end. Everything is ready to turn fiction into truth, but Saga must flip the switch. As Alan hands her the pages, Scratch bursts in. Spotting him, Anderson activates the clicker. The new ending of Return takes hold. The Dark Presence must abandon Alex Casey's body. Seeking a fresh vessel, it lunges for Alan's mind. The writer offers no resistance, humbly accepting the darkness within himself. He transforms into Scratch. The moment he does, Saga Anderson loads a bullet of light, aims at the writer's head, and pulls the trigger. Scratch falls, but Alan pays the ultimate price, becoming the story's tragic sacrifice. There is no happy ending for Alan Wake. Firing the shot, Saga hopes Logan is safe. Casey awakens, asking if they've won. With trembling hands, Anderson dials her daughter. The line rings endlessly as the credits roll. Yet, mid-credits, a revelation emerges. A video of Alice Plays speaking directly to her husband. She confesses that after visiting the Federal Bureau of Control in 2017, her memories returned. The lake's captivity, the dark place's suffocating grip. The darkness had animated her deepest fears. During her brief time in the lake, she witnessed the same horrors Alan faced in nocturnal New York. Alan was the light that freed her, trading his freedom for hers. Now, Alice knows Alan isn't dead, but trapped in Cauldron Lake. Seeing his manifestations in Parliament Tower as desperate pleas, she took a gamble. To fuel his creative rage, she faked her suicide through her photography exhibition. In truth, she plunged into the lake, entering the dark place. From the shadows, she guided them. It was Alice's hand that caught the clicker, passing it to Saga so she could deliver it to Wake. Alice reveals that Alan's looping nightmares leave him only two paths: destruction or ascension. Ascension alone can return him to the light, but it remains agonizingly out of reach. Yet, through their combined efforts, hope lingers. Together, Alice and Alan inch closer, though Wake must still tread his manuscript's loops. Suddenly, Alan jolts awake in the writer's room, gasping, "It's not a loop, it's a spiral." He must navigate this spiral to escape. Alan must walk this story again and again, chasing ascension. We return to the beginning, but the game isn't over. Just like the first Alan Wake, completing the journey unlocks a new, nightmarish path forward. In that nightmare mode, you found new pages of departure. Remedy brings this to the sequel, adapting to the modern era with a new game plus, letting you carry your arsenal back into the dark. They hid fresh narrative blood in this new game plus, dubbed the Final Draft. It offers new pages of Return, unseen television broadcasts in the dark place, and, most crucially, the true, definitive ending. This true ending logically continues the main game's climax. If the first run left you in the dark, launching New Game Plus throws you onto the spiral's next coil, promising to finally lead the hero to ascension. The Final Draft mirrors the original events, save for a few grim nuances. Alan's opening monologue shifts. Armed with the last spiral's memory, he declares that thrillers hold not just monsters, but heroes seeking the light. Heroes braving the abyss will reach the light. Arriving in Bright Falls with Alex Casey, Saga feels a fleeting déjà vu, like a forgotten dream. She dismisses the phantom memory, continuing her investigation unchanged. As for Alan has forgotten most of his previous descent. He walks the chapters of initiation exactly as before. The dark place demands adherence to narrative rituals. He cannot simply write a nuclear bomb to obliterate the shadows. He cannot skip the grueling detective work in the subway, hotel, or theater to jump straight to the end. Yet, the ending is the vital step toward ascension, and this time, Alice will ensure he reaches it. Alice guides her husband toward the light, slipping a photograph into the elevator. Alan's face, pierced by a bullet of pure radiance. This image grants him the strength to endure, anchored by his beloved's unwavering support. A strange detour emerges, starring none other than Dr. Casper Darling. Having traded his humanity for Hedron's resonance before the Hiss invasion, the FBC scientist became a paranormal echo, speaking to Jesse through visions, neither truly alive nor entirely dead. Drifting between dimensions, Darling washes up on the shores of the dark place. The scientist measures and observes, only to realize this realm operates on the twisted logic of dreams, where a radio signal catches Alan Wake reciting his cursed manuscript. Darling theorizes, this endless broadcast breathes reality into the dark place, making the narrator a dreamer whose nightmares take flesh. Trapped in this non-linear purgatory, the scientist watches his own thoughts warp the dimension around him. By day, 665, science has failed him. The moment Darling accepts that only art can break these chains, Thomas Zane materializes. Over cocktails, the eccentric filmmaker proposes a desperate collaboration, an escape plan fusing science and creativity. Darling eagerly embraces the project, stepping into the unknown with his new partner. Yet, Thomas Zane remains a shadow in this grand narrative. We must remember the chilling implication from the first tale. Alan Wake's entire life was seemingly scripted. Scripted from childhood by Thomas Zane, not the eccentric filmmaker we see now. Did Zane truly create Alan? The question bleeds like an open wound, refusing to heal, even as the sequel casts its flickering light upon the mystery. Digging deeper into this labyrinth invites pure madness. Hours slip away in the dark, chasing the phantom of Thomas Zane's true identity. Two paths emerge in the fog. Either Tom is real, and Alan is merely his fictional puppet. Or Thomas Zane was always a phantom born from Alan's own typewriter. Both theories crumble under scrutiny, the evidence mocking logic by supporting two diametrically opposed truths. Perhaps the real answer lies buried somewhere in the murky middle. Or perhaps truth is an illusion, a cruel trick played upon us all. We witness the violent collision of two realities, watching helplessly as a story forged in the dark place rewrites the very history of our waking world. The past is no longer sacred. When Saga first meets Ilmo Koskela, she is a stranger, but as the manuscript bleeds into reality, their next encounter shifts. Suddenly, he remembers her as a lifelong friend. Fiction murders the truth. Fiction ascends to become the only breathing truth. By this twisted logic, Alan could easily hijack the life of Finnish director Thomas Zane, scripting a reality where Zane directs Tom the poet, birthing a character destined to save him. This fictional poet Tom becomes Alan's weapon against the dark presence. It explains the impossible poster, a film based on Alan Wake's novel, shot before the writer drew his first breath. Time itself bends to the narrative's will. Both of Zane's cinematic nightmares bear the mark of Dark Place films. They were forged in the abyss. White Knight was a dark pact, shot in collaboration with Mr. Scratch to fuel the sinister manuscript of Return. The film injects fresh poison into the manuscript, bleeding horrors into reality. Yet, the Grandmaster's cryptic rant haunts us. Is Alan merely a pawn? Why do Ahti and the Anderson brothers insist on calling him Tom? They speak of his return as if Tom himself has risen. The parallels are a suffocating mirror. Two celebrated creators, both drowning in the dark place to save the women they love, both stalked by obsessed fans claiming to be muses. Both muses are tainted by the shadows, reborn as ladies of the light. The echoes are deafening. Perhaps we should wield Occam's razor, slicing through the madness to accept a simpler, more terrifying truth about Alan Wake. Alan Wake might just be a phantom in Zane's script, no more real than the fictional detective Alex Casey. The game offers no solace, only the grim revelation of Zane as an antagonist, standing shoulder to shoulder with Mr. Scratch. Zane is Scratch's closest ally, perhaps even a fractured reflection of the demon himself. His manic dances and twisted grin scream of the dark doppelganger. He orchestrated the cult of the word slaughter, feeding Alan the bloody breadcrumbs. At every grisly crime scene, Zane's dark poetry stains the walls. His words fuel the cultists' manic chants, his film revered as their sacred text. Beneath the Grandmaster's mask, it is Thomas Zane pulling the bloody strings. He hides behind the Grandmaster's mask. But what if this isn't Thomas Zane, but his dark doppelganger? Like Mr. Scratch, the filmmaker's shadow consumes him entirely, a grim fate the writer barely escaped. Whoever this phantom truly is, whatever his hidden motives, he guides Alan through the dark initiation. Meanwhile, Ahti's true nature bleeds into the Remedy universe, a cryptic note hinting at the Janitor's unfathomable power. Ahti commands Cauldron Lake, holding dominion over all waters. He spills the very puddles that bridge our fractured realities, slipping seamlessly into the dark place. The Janitor is no mere mortal. He is the ancient water god of Finnish myth. Speaking of deities, as Saga stalks the dark place toward Parliament Tower, she finds Thor and Odin drinking heavily by the fountain, waiting in the shadows. The old blood speaks. They missed Saga in the previous spiral, trapped playing Herald of Darkness on Mr. Door's twisted stage. They brokered a bitter peace with Door, solely to drag Alan from the abyss. Sinking into the lake for their final gig, they close the fatal loop. Saga begs the Andersons to flee the dark place, but the old gods refuse. Their time in the waking world is dead and gone. They whisper a secret promise of a future reunion. Saga steps into the writer's room, and the final act loops once more. Yet now, watching from the shadows, Alan finally grasps the grim truth. He realizes the dark entity was born the exact moment the bullet of light shattered his skull in the last spiral. It festers from his expelled darkness, seizing control, writing "Return" with his bloodied hands. The insatiable shadow seeks to devour him, but Alice pulls him from the brink. Saga fires the fatal shot, dials Logan's number, and finally hears her daughter's tearful voice, trembling from a waking nightmare. Saga breathes, promising her daughter a safe return. Alan pays the ultimate price to save Bright Falls. Suddenly, the bullet hole in his skull ignites, a glowing third eye tearing open as he breaches the surface. A blinding enlightenment takes hold. He tells a stunned Alex and Saga that Scratch is dead. Cleansed of the darkness, Alan ascends to the real world, bringing back a terrible light of absolute knowledge. Wake now stands as the master of countless worlds. The curtain falls on a fleeting victory. Alan is free, yet the nightmare lingers. Alice remains trapped in the dark place, waiting for her savior. Perhaps this grim rescue awaits in the third act, though the writer's twisted labyrinth defies all prediction. We foresaw a trilogy: departure, initiation, return. This brutal descent was always meant to be the initiation. Here, the hero endures a violent transformation, staring death in the eyes only to be reborn with a dark gift. The manuscript of Return exists, but it remains trapped within the crushing grip of initiation. The true Return awaits in the final chapter, bringing a changed man back to where the nightmare began. Or perhaps Alan, wielding his newfound power, will shatter the very confines of this twisted narrative. He might write a fourth book, breaking the three-act curse entirely. The New Game Plus ending feels like a desperate safeguard, a neat conclusion forged just in case this dark tale meets financial ruin. It leaves the story mercifully resolved. I pray Remedy escapes the curse of their past, allowing the trilogy to breathe. I won't argue the plot's sheer genius. My own bias clouds the bloody waters. I am a devoted disciple of the Finnish studio, utterly captivated by their shadows. Since the first descent, I envisioned countless twisted fates, yet the writers carved a path I never saw coming. Their chosen continuation defies every grim expectation. The original tale was never a simple read. It demanded obsession, a second playthrough, and frantic notes scribbled in the dead of night to unravel its secrets. Yet, against the sequel's maddening, multi-layered labyrinth, the first Alan Wake feels like a mere bedtime story. This suffocating complexity stands as the script's greatest triumph and its most fatal, bleeding flaw. Like a nesting doll, smaller tales hide within the grand design. Alan desperately manipulates Saga to escape the dark place. They walk separate paths, seemingly divided by an impassable void, yet their fates remain inextricably bound. Their isolated narratives bleed together in the shadows. Deeper still, more stories fester. Saga unravels dark local legends, hunting specific locations to tear open the overlaps. Meanwhile, Alan drowns in his own discarded drafts. Alan endures the drafts of initiation, occult detective nightmares, cryptic bargains with Mr. Door, and spectral encounters with Thomas Zane. Agent Anderson walks a straight, linear road, keeping her reality somewhat tethered to sanity. Wake's reality, however, is a shattered mirror. Chronology bleeds out. Cause and effect swap places in the dark. Crucial truths are deliberately buried, veiled in thick whispers, or spoken plainly to minds unready to comprehend them. Without the full picture, the truth feels like madness. The narrative crawls forward, then drags itself backward, twisting the established lore of past Remedy games. For a seeker of convoluted mysteries, Alan Wake 2 is salvation. It is a grim gift from Remedy. You pull at the bloody threads, sinking deeper into the abyss for answers that may not exist. The plot lies to you, building false hope only to shatter it. The narrative mutates across genres, dragging you deeper into its obsession. Yet, this labyrinth demands absolute surrender. Miss a single clue, and you are lost in the dark. No one is here to hold your hand. Skip a beat, and you bleed for it. This isn't Horizon, where 3 different faces spoon-feed you the truth until you choke on it. Here, the shadows keep their secrets, demanding you earn every revelation. Even the most devoted Remedy scholars must walk this nightmare twice to grasp its edges. Starting this universe with Alan Wake 2 is a fatal mistake, leaving uninitiated souls wandering the dark, burdened by the hollow realization that they wasted their time. I felt that same bitter sting with Twin Peaks, a void deeper than my hours lost to Lords of the Fallen. From this suffocating complexity, a second fatal flaw emerges. Spiraling narratives promise a grand, explosive revelation at the end of the line. You expect a climactic, blood-soaked showdown. Instead, the final boss is a phantom, and the void simply whispers, "Walk the spiral again." The climax dissolves into ash. New Game Plus injects a dose of fatalistic drama, but the damage is done. Disillusioned outsiders, burned by the hollow finale, refuse to surrender another 18 hours to the dark. They seek cheap answers elsewhere, and I cannot blame them. Yet, as a loyalist, I embrace the narrative. My only curse is leaving mysteries unsolved, as Alan Wake 2 plants seeds for Remedy's future nightmares. Shadows stretch toward Control 2 and a grand final act for Wake. Too many gods crowd this universe now. Mechanically, it calls itself survival horror, yet the bitter struggle for survival is entirely forgotten. True horror demands desperate resource management, a suffocating lack of bullets and bandages. It forces agonizing choices. Risk your life for a hidden cache, or slip past the monsters in the dark to save your steel. But the adaptive loot system pities you, vomiting endless ammunition the moment your chambers run dry, slaughtering any real tension. The enemies are scarce, a ghostly whisper compared to the relentless hordes of the past. Scarcity is a myth in Alan Wake 2. Even walking the nightmare difficulty on a second descent, the shadows barely bite harder. The grim truth is, the terror feels indistinguishable from a casual stroll. The monsters grow thicker skin, but they pose no real threat. My pockets overflow with unspent lead and unused medicine. It feels as though the game itself is terrified to push me to the brink. It refuses to make me bleed. Yet, the heavy, Resident Evil-style gunplay satisfies a dark urge. I crave the rare chance to execute the Taken. The brutal changes to the combat feel like a blessing. You no longer need to burn them alive with light. Shattering their dark shields exposes a fatal flaw, though raw lead still tears through flesh. Alan fights fewer shadows, but combat was never the true nightmare. Combat fades, yielding to the true mechanics of narrative evolution. Saga's detective board and Alan's shifting scenes demand your focus. This maddening web of cards is no trivial distraction, but the very core of the ordeal. You cannot simply brute force this labyrinth. At first, the mechanic feels fresh, a cerebral puzzle where reading every card unravels lingering mysteries. Yet, the relentless duty of maintaining this interactive ledger soon reveals its heavy toll. The chore grows tedious, an inescapable mandate that earns the board its suffocating reputation. Yet, for those truly consumed by the unfolding mystery, pausing the hunt to organize these scattered thoughts brings no discomfort, only deeper immersion. Pinning facts within the mind place feels natural, save for the bitter end. When Saga drowns in creeping despair, the endless sorting of cards drags into an agonizing crawl. Still, this violent shift in gameplay ultimately proves triumphant. The original game demanded years of rest before a second descent, its weight too crushing. Yet this sequel pulls me back endlessly. I walk its shadowed paths repeatedly, hungry for the impending DLC. True art demands such obsession. A profound experience transcends mere mechanics and plot. Games stand as the ultimate composite art form, and here, Remedy ascends to dizzying heights. They weave countless disparate threads into a tapestry so complex, only they could master it. No sane studio pours such agonizing effort into sheer artistic vision. The visual splendor demands a heavy hardware toll, yet Remedy's creations always serve as technological crucibles. The environmental design commands absolute reverence, crafted with obsessive, meticulous care. Every detail breathes a grim reality, from the filth-choked alleyways to the deceptive softness of the forest floor. Beyond the sheer graphical fidelity that defies compression, a suffocating, undeniable style bleeds through every single frame of this nightmare. Double exposures, born in control, now reach a maddening perfection. The seamless bleed between live-action film and digital reality refines the experiments of Quantum Break, and Night Springs, a full cinematic short hidden within the madness, defies all belief. The cast delivers haunting performances. Sean Ashmore shines, and Sam Lake reclaims his iconic guise as the hard-boiled detective. Yet, a shadow falls. James McCaffrey, the legendary voice of Max Payne, has slipped into the dark. He breathed life into Thomas Zane, Director Trench, and Alex Casey. This sequel stands as his final testament, a blistering performance that reaches an unforgettable crescendo in the last draft of Initiation. The music, too, demands absolute reverence. Foregoing standard license tracks, Remedy forges a bespoke auditory nightmare. They collaborate across genres, crafting original songs where every lyric bleeds directly into the narrative, echoing the grim events unfolding within this cursed town. Guided by Sam Lake's pen, these lyrics achieve an unprecedented synergy. The old gods of Asgard, poets of the fall, deliver 3 thunderous anthems alongside a phantom track, The Sea of Night, echoing from their Rebirth compilation. That mournful ballad mirrors the Anderson brothers' bitter farewell. Together, these elements forge Alan Wake 2 into a masterwork, a culmination of Remedy's darkest obsessions. This is no blind praise. The creation shatters its genre's confines. It boldly dissects the medium, twisting immersion and meta-narrative into experimental shapes. Such unapologetic storytelling will alienate some and enthrall others. Yet, I must commend Remedy for relentlessly pursuing their twisted, uncompromising vision to the bitter end. They willed this nightmare into existence, pouring raw devotion into every shadow. It takes profound courage to birth such a fiercely conceptual sequel, defying the endless obstacles that sought to bury Alan Wake's story forever in the dark. Such audacity commands respect. I rejoice for Remedy and Sam Lake, claiming their rightful accolades for a masterful narrative. Now, we linger in the shadows, hungering for the DLC to drag us back into this mesmerizing, inescapable abyss.